I feel like I've seen enlightenment, and I thought it was going to be about levitating and telekinesis, and it's actually just about an increased awareness of how annoying I am. Go ahead and hit it.
You want me to what?
I want you to hit it. All right. Here's what I'm not good at as a podcaster is giving the important information in the podcast notes. That is not my strong suit. So, what is the name of the podcast? That is a critique of Laura Knight Yazik that left a comment, something about Atlanta.
Atlanta. Let me look it up. I mean, it's pretty easy if you just type her name in. It comes up pretty quick. Let's see. Esoteric Atlanta. You're right, Atlanta.
See? Atlanta? Uh-oh.
Yeah, that's the name of the channel. Esoteric Atlanta. And there's one that comes up if you search just Laura Knight Yazik, but if you go to their page and then you go to, I think, playlists, there's a whole playlist on the Cassiopean. Yeah, the Cassiopean Cult Files. 17 videos in that playlist. Some of them short, some of them long.
So I tried to listen to a little bit of those because, like I said, and then people have asked what documentary. There isn't a documentary yet, but the comment that Esoteric Atlanta left on our video said that they're working on a documentary.
Right.
And I said I will watch that documentary because I love cult documentaries.
So then somebody left on that, like kind of in that theme, someone left a comment and said, oh, you should check out the guy who was pushing the law of one.
I think the comment was, or the guy from Nexium did a podcast series on the guy who's pushing law of one. Yeah. And we had to do a little bit of investigating to figure it out. But we went on a road trip, and road trips are the only time you can get me to listen to podcasts long form. So we went into the rabbit hole of
Bentinho Massaro.
Bentinho Massaro, as reported on Mark Vincente's podcast called What the Fuck is on My Mind. So if you go to Mark Vincente's podcast, he has a whole playlist called Insta Guru about Bentinho Massaro, who you were familiar with. I was not familiar with. Ugh. And trigger warning, because we listened to the Aaron Abke episode, and then we got to episode 5, and there is some pretty, trigger warning sexual assault.
Yeah, it gets kind of dark and ominous with some of the stories. But I think that's part of the,
There's rape. There's rape.
Yeah.
A lot of the story is about, abuse, emotional, mental abuse from this cult leader or whatever. And that's all heavy and dark or whatever. But then it took a real turn on the last couple episodes. So maybe not. Maybe just listen to our, some of you might just want to listen to our breakdown of it. So I don't know what angle we want to take this. Is this rain going to get picked up by the mics?
Maybe just for a minute, but it's not going to last long. I looked at it on the radar. It's just coming through real quick. It's kind of monsoony right now, though, in North Carolina, which we needed
finally
badly.
My water bill thanks you. So I think first, let's circle back a little bit to the Laura Knight conversation, because we got some interesting comments, one of which I wanted to go back to, that was about, there was an interesting comment about AI, and then another one about a couple, I think, about Laura Knight's cult, quote unquote cults. Mm-hmm. So the conversation about AI, the comment about AI was I find it frustrating that people let AI run their entire life. Essentially was what was said. And I think we hit on this in the conversation about Laura Knight, and we're definitely going to hit on it here, is the complaint about chatbots is that they're giving wrong information, and then people are basing their entire life on that. And we're going to do an episode next week about the Oprah podcast about people going into AI psychosis, so we don't have to spend much time on that. But I think that the thing that frustrates me in conversations about cults is that people who start to follow, cult leaders way past their body trying to tell them to stop, and their intuition telling them to stop, and people around them telling them this isn't safe, and they keep going. But then the people who keep going and following the cult leader so much past what is safe for them, they are seen as hapless victims, and everything is focused on the cult leader. And my issue with that is, and we're really going to get into this here, almost always when I hear these cult leader stories, I'm like, this is a deeply unwell person. We have to, if we want this to stop happening, create some sort of framework in which you trust your body, you trust your mind, you trust the people around you. And we have to get to the root of why healthy, normal people, I use normal for lack of an adjective there, why your average person can get sucked into these cults. And so then whenever someone tries to have that conversation, they're like, you're victim blaming. Well, no, let's take blame and fault out of it, because blame and fault are idiotic concepts. It is your responsibility to take care of yourself and to trust your own intuition. If we're not talking about what makes people forego that, which I think is a cultural issue. I think it's raising compliant kids. I think it's encouraging people to people please. I think it's groupthink in general and culture. And then there are people in the story with the Bentinho Massaro thing that are like, oh, I was vomiting. My body was telling me to stop doing this so much that I was vomiting, but I kept going. And then we go, it's because he's bad. Well, it's like, yeah, no shit, he's bad. You listen to the stories, you're like, this dude's absolutely out of his mind. Yeah. But we can't do anything about the fact that some people are absolutely out of their mind. We have to figure out some sort of framework at the individual level to teach people from children how to trust themselves. And the problem is that we're raising people to do the opposite of that. We're raising compliant children.
Right.
Okay. So anyway, that's kind of the overarching theme. So in the conversations about Laura Knight, which I went and we listened to some chunks of podcasts from the Esoteric Atlanta.
I listened to a lot of them. I mean, I spent hours.
Was it similar to this Bentinho one where they have accounts of people's experience in it? Because here's my issue. When it's a conversation about a cult and all you guys want to talk about is how you don't believe what the things they believe, it's like there's just a chance you don't understand what they're talking about. Yeah. The thing I really enjoyed about this cult series is it was about people's experience with Bentinho Massaro and a little bit on how he twisted the law of one to benefit him, right? And justify his behavior. Everything I've listened to, and admittedly I haven't listened to a lot about the esoteric Atlantic stuff, is you're debating the fucking semantics of the belief system, and then also being like, she's bad. And those are two separate conversations.
Right. Whether
or not you resonate with the belief system or the things in the channeling or the channeling's real or whatever, I think that's all subjective and doesn't matter. If people are being harmed, then that's a conversation about this person. But the little bit I've listened to from and then for me, it's like, I don't doubt that Laura Knight might be a bad person that has some shadowy shit. I don't really, I mean, I don't know. I'm not like super invested in her work, but like that to me is a separate conversation. So at no point in listening to the Bentinho Massaro, whatever, Ben, we're going to call him Ben from now on because I've been getting his name wrong for days. They don't spend a ton of time on the law of one, which I enjoy, because if they were just going on and on about the law of one and how it's negative, I would lose interest because it's a channeled piece of work. So it's like art and everyone's going to take something different from it. And whenever I hear like an atheist do an expose on a cult, you know, unless it's a cult built from scratch, like that Mother God cult or whatever, that was kind of interesting. But anyway, in the Esoteric Atlantic stuff, do they have, I know they said they have interviews from people who left there. Do they have like first person accounts of being treated bad?
I didn't see a lot, but I think that they've said on the podcast multiple times that they have a bunch of people that were in the cult, whistleblowers, as you'd say, that they've interviewed, and that maybe there's a podcast somewhere in there where they do interview a person. I didn't find one, but no, a lot of it, most of the stuff I listen to is their opinions on the philosophy of it and how she's a bad person. And that's the thing. I mean, most people are bringing their biases into any kind of review or argument, which is kind of a common, it's hard to not have the bias, but like, that's where all the growth happens, I think, is when you're able to talk about it neutrally and not get lost in the subjectivity of it. For the most part, that's what Esoteric Atlanta was conveying to me. I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, you guys are bringing all your baggage into it. And frankly, the commonality with a lot of these things, like the philosophies that are in the cults and just philosophy that's in like general spirituality, is it's esoteric information, which is, and we're bringing like exoteric thought to it. So we're not able to understand what is being said, and we're understanding it through our own filter and lens. And then we have all these opinions in that lens. And what usually the content, the philosophy is talking about is underneath the biases that you typically bring in. And so that's why, I mean, a lot of this information you can't understand unless you're like in a process of initiation and you're out of your own way, and you can at least recognize your filters. And so that's primarily what all of that is to me, which is why it's hard to kind of get convinced by their opinion, you know? Where the Benito thing, it's like, it's much more direct experience, direct stories. And it's not like lost in the biases.
Yeah. So the series we just listened to, the what did I just say his name is?
Mark Vicente.
Mark Vicente was in the Nexium cult, which the documentary The Vow, we should maybe go back and watch that. I feel like we watched that like 6 years ago. But and I think I slept through it. The Vow was about the Nexium cult. And so then he interviews people who have come from high control groups, which I think is a great name for it. I think cult overemphasizes the belief system, and high control group is definitely a better description. And the pattern that I see in most of these is you have a charismatic individual who is in psychosis and who has some sort of personality disorder. They're a psychopath, a narcissist, something like legitimately pathological person in some sort of like psychosis, and they pull other people into their psychosis with them. And then when you hear people talk about the experience of being in this cult, it does just sound like a group psychosis, and I've had a lot of experiences with pathological people in my life. There were a lot of them on meth. You could get pulled into very strange pockets of reality where it's like, I can't get out. I'm in a cabin in the woods, in the mountains with some people I went here from a party, and now I'm living in some sort of rich guy's weird control thing for 2 weeks. I've just had a lot of those kind of experiences. So when I hear people talk about, this group kind of being controlled by this person and everyone just kind of going along for the ride, like this person's giddy and childlike, and then they're mean and whatever, and everyone's trying to please them. It's like, I've been there. So you and I even had an experience when we first met with someone that was staying at your house, that for a few months we were living in their fever dream, And so, and if you're a people pleaser or, easily your empathy is easily exploited, I can definitely see how you get in there, especially with the way that we have this culture set up, where you're trained from a young child that the consensus is right, that you should follow the group, that the group should democratize everything and decide what happens. And so when the group is going, yeah, this is cool, like, oh, he's right, he knows what he's doing, and you've not fostered an independent version of truth, then you're like so far in your own masking, you don't even realize that you're like, yes, we should all fuck this guy that we think is gross, So, the Esoteric Atlanta stuff, it feels very, once again, my disclaimer, I don't doubt that Laura Knight is maybe shitty behind closed doors. I don't doubt that. I do resonate with some of the channeled stuff. I would say that most of the channeled stuff from Laura Knight that I resonate with is also in Law of One. I don't think that I just don't think anything in reality exists in all or nothing black and white like that. So it's just like, here's some information. If it resonates, leave it, take it, leave the rest, whatever. This Ben guy, I think, is the case of a deeply unwell person read a book and twisted it to meet his super distorted worldview, and because he's hot. And I don't find him charismatic at all. I also don't find him hot, but I get that he's hot by culture standards. And he made some high production quality content. A bunch of people followed him and then ended up in his extremely warped reality. I think that if that's what was happening in the Laura Knight situation, you would have, there's a long list of people with stories about this. I don't know if that does exist with the Laura Knight stuff or not.
I don't think it does. I have not seen any evidence of it. There's an inner circle and stuff, and I think I understand why some people create these barriers to get in, like paywall stuff and private, because the information is ripe for misunderstanding and a lot of people abusing that and getting close. So like I can understand some of that, but then you're also going to have a symptom of that inner circle is like there's a hierarchy like leveraging everyone now. So within that, I could see how there's from an outside view, you can easily connect dots and be like, they're doing some dark shit in that inner circle,
It's so tricky because I still have the conditioning that is like, I want to put things in a box. Like even right now, my brain is going, I need to compare the Laura Knight thing with this thing. And the reality is like all this stuff has to be done at the individual level. And I want there to be this like list of things to look at for a cult. And so when people go, well, she has an inner circle and the inner circle like regulates things. I remember in the soberish days, there were certain people in the community I resonated with, and they became my friends. I met you from the community, from the podcast. We got into a relationship. I made a few friends through the podcast, and those were my friends. And I remember at one point, those people being referred to as the inner circle. And I'm like, no, they're just the people I'm not on a fucking intimate friendship level with every single person who listens to my podcast. I'm trying to not have a fame thing because I don't like that. But I also don't have, there's just not enough of me, nor am I interested in being in a complete, like having 5,000 friends that I need to keep up with. Do you know what I mean? And so a lot of these things can get projected where you can like not even refer to having an inner circle. And that turns into a thing, and then there's also just like your average person can only do so much. And if you're trying to build a big thing, which I'm never trying to do, but like you have to scale it. So eventually other people have to run parts of it. And so there are times and situations where there appears to be an inner circle that is not necessarily means nefarious. It's definitely a cult. Yeah.
It's a function at some level, right? Like I even think of with celebrity culture and the little experience that I had going into these like different paradigms of experience of people. Certain celebrities that are like mega famous don't have a lot of anonymity to function. Like you have to have an inner circle, like barrier so you can function. Like if you don't have enough anonymity to like go get a coffee and not get overwhelmed and that a coffee takes 2 hours instead of 30 minutes, you have someone that goes to take care of that for you. So you don't have to deal with those things. That spirals into like starting to become bigger and bigger where you don't interact with any stranger because you're in a different paradigm. So like,
yeah.
And that was like a very real thing that I was kind of like bucking against at certain points. I don't want people taking care of my laundry and shit, but like at a functional level, like it's just easier to do it that way. And so that can also get hijacked and taken advantage of, and there can become nefarious stuff that happens in those. But yeah, I see that as a function. And I don't know, cults are difficult, and like it's a control group. What do you call it?
High control group, I think, is a much better description, because you're not looking at what do they believe.
And I think that's what's really difficult about so many things that like so many spiritual ideas that are pushed like quickly get turned into cults, because there's like seems to be a resonant truth to it that like everyone goes, oh yeah, this is it. And then you kind of overlook some of these other misunderstandings that have happened, that then you allow this abuse to kind of occur, because there's a way to look at it from a spiritual or just like a wider perspective that seems for it to be like okay that we do this. And everyone's trying to deconstruct their idea of culture. So that's like a good motivation. We're all trying to kind of deprogram. But as you take those programs off, you're vulnerable for like a new program. And if you're also trying to be open to like, well, I need to be open to other ways of being, you can easily like say okay to a sexual abuse that you're trying to go, well, maybe this is okay. Everybody always says we shouldn't do this, but maybe there's something new for me to experience here. And then when you have a smart individual or just a very unconscious individual knowing how to manipulate truths into a way that like someone gets taken advantage of like that, it's so ripe for that to occur. I almost think cults are kind of a symptom of what the culture has been programming people. Like you're saying, like the fact that we're programmed to be worker bees and like not trust our intuition, trust the group, that is a ripe area for cults to start to take effect, because you're taking advantage of people's programming and stuff. It's so easy that way. And that's why I think it has become a phenomena that is like, we see cults all the time now, and something that we thought wasn't and now is. And it's because we're all having to play out like how unconscious we've been and what evil actually looks like. It typically doesn't look like a scary monster or something that's very obvious. It's hidden under people like Benito's, like very beautiful, articulate, and can mimic an enlightened being very well, because he's got all the shiny stuff and seems like he's got it all together. And I don't think that's I'm torn between that he's consciously doing this negatively, or he believes his own thing and is caught in his own labyrinth. But it's very easy. Like you can see how somebody can fall into that,
Yeah. So Benito, there's an H in there somewhere. Massaro was a spiritual content creator. Sounds like for a lot of the 20 teens, he was doing law of attraction stuff, which is just, that community is ripe with shitbags. And then at some point in the late 20 teens, got a hold of the law of one, and he started teaching law of one stuff. And a lot of that doctrine is service to self, service to others, which is very exploitable.
The entire doctrine, I mean, I wouldn't call it a doctrine, but that entire way of thinking, the law of one, why it's so controversial, and I'd say why the Laura Knight thing is so easily misunderstood, is this thing I was saying earlier. It is like deeply esoteric. Right. You're not supposed to understand any of that physically, materially. Like there is nothing in there of that. In fact, if you understand it that way, it's upside down.
Right. So I'm just trying to give some like framework, because we tend to jump into these conversations as if everyone knows what we're talking about. So he's doing these videos. He appears to be very successful. He has this whole like, what's that called? It's the Leonardo DiCaprio movie. Gatsby thing going on, where he's smoking cigars and, putting off this like big wealth thing, which was very popular when we had Neptune and Pisces, and, bringing a little illusion to the spiritual awakening. And then also Pluto and Capricorn, which was like show off what you have, right? And so all of these stories are of people who then ended up connecting with him through his community online. They get together with him. He is moving from place to place, mostly outside of the US. And hysterically, a pattern that I noticed was like from haunted house to like abandoned, like was a mental hospital at some point. Like he's moving to all these creepy environments, which if you understand, not to say going and visiting those things isn't fine for people who are into that. But when you understand like this kind of chaotic person, and then they're exclusively renting these like chaotic environments, it is just kind of interesting. But all of these stories are of people who believe themselves to be chosen, and he does the like narcissistic abuse, just fucking textbook love bombing, and then starting to kind of chip away at you. All of the women that got involved with him, he then was like, I need to have another girlfriend. Read Marcus. And then the having another girlfriend ends up causing, and have I been on the polyamory when you don't want it, open relationship, mind fuck. And so then then that's being portrayed as we are moving beyond the ego in relationship, and we're doing a new type of relating. And I'm actually in extreme pain watching him make out with this girl because it's cracking me open. I mean, I think a lot of us have played around with this level of, self-harm portraying as facing what we're afraid of. And then the general gist is that everything Benito does is divinely appointed by, he kind of believes himself to be the
Raw.
But it's never explicitly said, which is very smart. And what is it with weirdos thinking they're raw? And all the harm he does to other people is because he's a mirror for them to work on their own shit.
Yeah.
So when he cheats on his girlfriend, this is for her to work through her jealousy. And whenever he gets called on his shit, he ends up on the floor bawling, and everyone capitulate, like, oh God, we're so sorry, whatever. And so then everyone in this group has an experience with, at some point, realizing this is insane, something's wrong here, and then the group kind of getting the group to wake up a little bit, and then Benito changes the vibe through either crying, freaking out, lashing out, whatever, and then everyone turns on the person. And if you stand up to him too many times, then you are possessed by a service to self entity because you're close to him.
Yeah.
And sometimes the people will believe they are possessed by a service to self entity. Sometimes they will reject that and they get kind of kicked out of the group. There is, for the most part, a lot of plans for projects they're going to do. The projects never happen because the group is kind of stuck in a perpetual state of doing distortion sessions where you sit down and Benito tells you the distortions he sees in you. And most of those distortions benefit him, but that's a coincidence. And so this thing is just this kind of writhing, chaotic fever dream that changes casts of characters every 12 months, which is how I know that this is just a deeply unwell person. This is like a narcissist going in and out of collapse, or a psychopath or something. Like, this is just a deeply unwell person, and for whatever reason he's magnetic, and so people magnetize to this, and then they just end up in the kind of washing machine over and over again and get spit out. And he takes their money, but it's all like kind of through coercion. Like I said, there's also like sexual coercion in here, and the kind of sexual coercion to where the person doesn't even really realize it's rape until it's years in the rear view, and they're kind of still trying to sort through what it is. And so one thing that really stands out is that what he put forth on Instagram, which is where I think YouTube, where he had his biggest following, is very different than what you see almost immediately upon being invited into the inner circle, or into like these hangs or whatever. But the thing that's funny is people will, when they tell the story of meeting him, it's like they already have him pedestalized, and then he is immediately not what he is in his curated videos. And the mental gymnastics that people do are really interesting, because oh, I realize he's actually being immature, or he's not doing what he said, or he's being a hypocrite. Like this, everyone clocks this on day one, but I felt really honored that I was chosen.
Yeah.
And so I think the thing that I kind of want to dig into now that we've like laid that groundwork is I'm not saying what happened to people is their fault. I think that blame and fault are matrix traps of concepts. Okay. I think that we culturally are set up to be victims of things like this, high control groups, because our culture is a high control group.
Right.
I think that like parenting practices in the United States are high control parenting practices because you're doing the work for the system. The way that people punish their kids, control every moment of their children's lives, like all of that creates compliant children who doubt their own internal experience so that they can be exploited by capitalism. And this is why people fall for cults. And so my critique on this is not about the individuals themselves. It's about the culture that we have created, but it might take a second to land that plane. But I took a bunch of notes for the episodes that we listened to for like both of us to dive in, but there is the gist of it. It's a very, I think NXIVM was a very organized kind of cult. This is not. This is a guy out of his mind and people like going from country to country with him. He's like, can't afford the Airbnbs. He's making them pay for it and stuff. It's chaotic. And I can't remember. I didn't watch the NXIVM thing, but
there are a lot of overlaps. I mean, I think NXIVM was much more mainstream and bigger. I mean, it had all kinds of celebrities.
Yeah. Wasn't it MLM or something? We'll have to watch that again.
What's MLM?
Multi-level marketing.
It probably has some of that in there. Yeah. I mean, I know like one of the people that got convicted was a huge celebrity. So it was taking advantage of a similar like crack in spirituality around that time, you know, like 2019 to 2020 was like, that's where the Benito thing was. The NXIVM cult was like a little bit before that, but it's like this ripe time where people were really open to trying to deprogram, and this thing, you know, captured it.
Yeah, because there was the guy who hosts the podcast, and he does a really good job of guiding through the conversations because he's had this experience. He said something at the end of the last one we listened to is people always want to know, how did this happen to you? And he was interpreting that as blame, like, why didn't you leave? And he's like, nobody ever asks why the bad guy did the bad thing. And I want to say, bad guys exist. Bad guys will probably always exist. And this guy is beyond redemption. And I am very, like, most things are misunderstandings. There's very little malice in the world. I don't actually even think this guy is malicious. I think he's deeply mentally unwell in an irredeemable way in this lifetime. I don't think that this soul in this lifetime can become conscious or self-aware. Yeah. And so similar to the bear in the woods, that just is. And so in establishing how to prevent this from happening, it has to happen at the individual thing. It can't happen at the like wrestling with the fact that psychopaths exist. And so I don't think that anyone should be blamed. And I also want to say that like just about anyone could end up in that situation.
100%.
I think a lot of people go, I would never. But when you listen to these people's stories, and if you've ever been caught in this web, like me and you, when we first met, you had an acquaintance at your house that we very much ended up in this situation. And because we didn't know each other very well, we were people pleasing our asses off. And we were like, maybe this is just what community is. Maybe this is just how you help people. And then next thing you know, like now when we look back and we talk about some of the things that happened, it's warped. It's very strange. We were very much in someone's psychosis. And so this can, especially if you've had controlling parents or there's many ways that this could happen to anyone. So this is not a critique on the individuals that it happened to, but eventually will be a critique kind of on the way that we have culture set up.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting for him even just to clock in that moment when he had that statement. He was very passionate about it. He was like, I'm sick of people, talking about the victims and blaming it on them. He's he had that experience, right? So
Yeah.
like when you come out of that experience, you're mainly going, this vicious devil here, we need to get rid of people like this. But I don't think that is, as you stated earlier, I think that there's usually in the cult documentaries become very obvious how negative this person is, and you can deduce like why it's occurring. Oh, he's a psychopath, or he's demonic, or whatever. Like we have a lot of knowledge on that, and like it's still not going away. In fact, a lot of them run the country, and we don't call it a cult because it doesn't look like the ones on the documentaries. But the only way to solve it, I think, is figuring out how these seemingly normal, innocent people got tricked. And that's not to say these people are dumb. It's the trick is so good that the way it lures you in and hypnotizes you out of your own authority, that is really advanced. And guess what? Unfortunately, that relies on both parties, the victims and the villain. And to mitigate it, to stop happening to innocent people, we have to unpack how this person got duped and try to put together the blueprint that is the trick that pulls you in, that keeps causing the cults, in all these different forms. I think that is the only way. But I understand from somebody that was a victim of it, why they would take the side of, why is everyone blamed? It's like, I feel like I'm the one to be blamed. And it's like, no one's blaming you, but like, there's something really useful to unpack how you got tricked into it, like that. Yeah. That is where it is. But he's not going to be able. I think he does a really good job on the podcast of being able to, from the experience, actually understand some of these complicated ideas and be able to hold space for someone that's going through it. I think he's really good at that. But I understand the bias, I guess is what I'm saying. It's like,
I think what he's trying to point out is like, there probably is some victim blaming there, but just understanding that when someone asks you how something bad happened to you, I noticed this with like people who lost children. When you lose a child, and that, like, let's say that story's on Facebook and people are asking questions, what they're really asking is for reassurance that it's not going to happen to them. And so then when they go like, oh, you had a miscarriage, but you drank coffee every day, that's why it happened. They're just trying to console themselves that this won't happen to me because I'm in control of my, And so it's when people ask about something like this, they're afraid and they go, they may very well be blaming the person. Yeah. I guess I just want to clarify that, like, obviously this dude sucks ass, like, fully. And also, he's not the one who wrote the book of The Law of One, and he completely bastardizes it to benefit him. It has nothing to do with the Law of One any more than a narcissist who weaponizes, therapy speak.
I would say the thing for me that's so ironic about some of these things is, again, it's like esoteric information. People are mostly understanding it exoterically because that's how you're trained, is understand it through logic and reasoning in your mind. The Benito thing to me is a perfect example of like the wisdom that I do think is in the Law of One and Laura's stuff, but it is all esoteric, and each individual is going to understand that esoteric information through your subjectivity. So it's very blurry what you do with that information. It's like kind of up to you, but it's so ripe for misunderstanding. And I would say Benito's case, his whole story is it's a perfect example of the Law of One, of the subtlety with which someone can be convinced they're doing something right and it's all wrong. And so the thing that's wrong about him is that he's claiming he's enforcing you should be this way because the Law of One says it and it's this. He's misinterpreting all of the Law of One. So my favorite part is him having this idea. It's a perfect closed loop. And that's what these cults, the really good ones, are closed loops, as in all of the reasoning for what happens always leads you back into a powerless state and the other person having the power. But there's a wisdom explanation that's given to you that you can go, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'll continue to let you take my power. It's a closed loop. So his idea of when someone is starting to stand up for themselves against the group, he goes, oh, shit, like, you're actually being attacked by an STS individual right now, because what we're doing here is the light. And whenever you make a certain step into the light and you actually are productive, the STS show up in a very subtle way to try to stop it. And so that closes the loop and makes it about the person. You're being attacked. And the person goes, oh shit, I am, which means I'm advancing. Okay, how do I get this out of me? And then he walks you through a way to like disempower yourself. He is the STS being the entire time. Like, that's what's so odd about it. But that is the power behind what I'm constantly talking about, the STS, STO stuff. It's so profound, but I guarantee you no one is understanding it. I don't know if I fully understand it. I understand the mechanism and everything, and every time I try to look at it in my daily decisions, I'm like, dude, it's complicated. As I've talked about with nature, do you save the nature? Do you save the innocent animal? Or do you let it do its thing? Or do you quicken get rid of the suffering? All of this is under the assumption I know what's better for nature. When I'm like, I don't know. It's so fucking profound and like organized and chaos at the same moment. It's like, I don't really know what to do, but I'm aware of the subtleties of which with which that like shows up every day in my decision making. And it's a true art to be able to like figure that out. And this example, like what Benito created, is a perfect display of the law of one STS, STO thing being misunderstood and portrayed as this like mimicry of a really complicated, esoteric, nuanced thing that is right on the fringes of like duality and non-duality. And I don't think you're supposed to kind of materially understand it. It's a very complicated thing, but to me, it's a wonderful lesson in how, like, all of Benito's stuff, it's like how you can bring your own misunderstandings into something, and like you get hijacked by thinking you're doing this like wonderful thing. And I think the most interesting, Mark Vincente brings it up a couple times with different victims. Do you think he's doing this consciously? Like, do you think he's an actual villain and he knows what he's doing with these manipulations he's doing, creating these closed loops? And there's times in the story where I'm like, yeah, it does feel like he has some kind of awareness. But the more interesting thing to me, and again, more valuable from the STS, STO, Law of One, Cassiopean stuff, is he doesn't know that any of that is bad. He like genuinely believes it because he misunderstood the information and got caught in his own delusion of everything. And that's the more interesting thing to try to unpack, because it kind of raises a paradox. It's like, in many ways, I could look at Benito and being like, he's being authentic. And he's being so authentic. He's like holding a very dark frequency, and that is authentic. And that should be allowed, right? Like, and from this like macro stance, it's like everything's allowed to exist. But the illusion with which that he has created for himself, it's like it's just a perfect blueprint for the way, the nuance, and with which like we're trying to be only like one way and like ascend in a process that is like it's all things exist, and so there's this bias thing that happens. And I think the fact that it's unconscious, there's a lot of wisdom within trying to understand how such a bad thing can happen when someone truly believes they're doing something right. He's an alien and he's trying to bring in the law of one and unity, and it like the mimicry of it is just wild to see. It's like, but on an energetic level, like if you actually have autonomy, you can take one look at the dude and go, oh, there's something off here.
Yeah, like, so you were familiar with him on social media and clocked that he was off.
Yeah, but what's really interesting, I was going to mention it earlier, is like there was a time he came in at the perfect time. It was right in that COVID area, and the Capricorn place, all this, the way astrology was, there was like a lot of people doing the spiritual thing kind of, but it was all kind of love and light and a little too like frou-frou. It was just outside of like what the...
Yeah, you came across him in 2019 when it was just pre-COVID, but the You were just getting into the law of one.
I had just gotten into the law of one, read all the books like twice, and like then was looking for more information as I do. I just kind of, where is everything that everybody's talked about? I want to understand how people don't understand this and everything. So
It's this.
I found Aaron Abke, who's in this documentary, and Aaron Abke was like, he's a guy who's deeply studied in the law of one. His past is interesting. He was very Christian, about to be like a pastor, had questions, found the law of one, and then like deconstructed his way out of Christianity. And that's a pretty stable pipeline to go from like high level intellectual Christianity to law of one, because law of one, more than the Cassiopeans, has a Christian overlay to it, but it's esoteric Christianity. So he was able to like unpack the law of one in a very good way that it break it down simply. And his energy is just good. It's a bit Christian, but his energy is like authentic and clear. And so I really liked a lot of the stuff that he was breaking it down in a different way. So it helped me expand. And then Benito was like kind of next on the search list when you searched law of one at that time. He was mentioning the law of one and like never claim he's like, here's this book, Law of One Raw, and this is my understanding. He's just kind of reworking the ideas. So it came up. And the thing that pulled me in right away is the thing now that I can see clearly as a shiny lure of a energy that is like very negative, presenting as something that's like new and fresh and like better than the other spiritual stuff. So the fact that he was very beautiful and like put together in this like suit way, didn't care about smoking cigars. He had this element that like some other people, like Choga Rinpoche or whatever, I always don't know how to say his name. Duncan Trussell's always going on about him. He was like a guru at a point where he blurred the lines between what most gurus were presenting as like very clean, no substances, very put together and pure. There was this like rascal side. Alan Watts is another one. He drinks and smokes all the time, but is talking about these profound things. And there was something about in the culture at that time, I wanted a little more edgy person to learn from, not this like perfect being. And so he had that because of the cigar and the Gatsby thing. You know, a lot of spirituality at the time was like, refuse all samsara, like all of reality. Any vice is nothing. You have to purify, you know, and I understood that in some way that's a thing. But then I was like, there's got to be a different route where people are just real and like allowed to be humans, but then also integrate and ascend. And so he captured that like he did in the moment. And so that's why I was intrigued, because I was like, he's saying this like profound shit that a lot of people didn't understand at the time, because it is that esoteric stuff. And he knew how to like, again, I don't think he's doing it viciously, but he's very intellectual. And this is also a good example of how you can, quote, wake up through knowledge and just like regurgitate the knowledge and fake enlightenment by taking longer to talk or sitting in silence and staring at everybody in the audience for a moment. It puts everybody at like they're at ease, they're uneasy, and they then put authority onto this person because they're doing something a little differently. So he's very good at that, very intellectual. I think he understands a lot of that stuff in ways that like normal people wouldn't. But I just remember watching one or two of his long videos, which were lectures at like real events, and jiving with it and kind of being enamored by, like, pulled into the illusion of like, this is a different way you can present spirituality and be intellectual and also have vices and be able to do those things. You know, there's like a part of you as you're waking up that's wanting to figure out how to get away, breaking rules still, but ascend, you know? So that at that time where I was like, okay, cool. And then until I started following him on his Instagram and then seeing his, like, over a couple months, like, who he was, then I was like, there is something really off about this, and there's something slimy about the way this guy is doing this. And it just had a fake vibe to me. I was like, he's hiding something. Kind of the same, not nearly as intense, but the same thing I had with Robert Grant at some point. I'm like, there's something off. Aubrey Marcus is like, there's a lot of truth stuff here, but like, why does this feel like you're mocking something, or you're doing this like weird caricature of what I think the real thing is? And so as my discernment, like as time goes on, your discernment gets better and better. Benito popped up. I stopped following him and I was like, this is fucking bullshit. And then he popped up again somewhere on a short, and it was like even worse. And then I was like, oh, this is like he's at a perfect time to capture a lot of people. And then I never heard about him again until we deduce this, and he popped up, and I was like, dude, that guy's still doing his spiel. Like, how have not people figured that out?
And I guess he had a documentary on YouTube made about him years ago that you said you thought you saw in 2020.
I don't know if I saw it, but I think I saw that there was something.
Saw that there was
coming
something
out.
there.
Yeah.
We should watch that.
Which I wasn't surprised. I mean, again, like I didn't know exactly what it was, but my intuition was just like, don't keep following this, whatever this is, you know. And I've had many of those, to be honest. A couple of them have turned out to be very clearly like distorted, you know.
Yeah. So, I guess the first thing I have written down, the thing that I think is interesting in this series, and we haven't finished it. We finished like 3 or 4 people that were in the group, and then Aaron Abke, who spent a very little bit amount of time with him. I would say Aaron was the one who got pulled in the least and pretty much saw it for what it was, like immediately. And then wasn't really in it. Was Aaron had already built his own following talking about the law of one.
Benito was trying to pull him in.
Benito was trying to pull him in. And then doing a lot of stuff like, you know, when you get around people like this. Oh, this is what I wanted to say before I lose my train of thought. People who, and I need a word for them. I'm tired of narcissist. I'm tired of, you know, I'm trying to convey here that this person is pathological. I don't like mentally ill means several different things. This person is unwell. Okay. Main character syndrome to a pathological degree. Undeniable. I don't think anyone could listen to any part of this and have any doubts. This person can't, in my opinion, know what he's doing, because in order to know what you're doing, you have to be able to face the shame. So for him to know that he is twisting the law of one to meet his whatever, that he is lying, that he is manipulating people, he would have to face the fact that he is not this grandiose thing that he has told himself that he is, and he can't. Look at that. He cannot be conscious by definition or by nature of this thing that we call narcissism or whatever. It is unconscious. He cannot become conscious, because to become conscious, you would have to face the shame. So it's almost, when you're dealing with something like this, it's a program in the matrix, or it's a parasite. It's a parasite that doesn't have logical thought, because he would have to look at his own shame in order to see what he's doing. So when you're around someone like this, it's an insatiable ego. It's an insatiable parasite, I think is the best word, that needs to constantly be fed so that it can maintain its illusion of grandiosity, right? And so when he gets around people, the things that he does that are deeply harmful to other people are just this tapeworm trying to eat. Like, that's it. I mean, it's an organism almost. Yeah. And we attribute
human
stuff onto it where it's not human. I mean, this could very well be, you know, some sort of alien energy sucker or whatever. But when you're dealing with someone who behaves this poorly, this quickly, and then drains the energy and the life force from everyone around them, we have to find some way of learning to engage with that energy, because it's now, the percentages of people who have this pathology are very high.
Rampant.
And we want to humanize it. And I'm not saying dehumanize it, but I'm saying, like, let's operate within the reality of what it is, you know? And you and I have had the experience with, you know, the person we're talking about and a couple other people in our lives where whatever it is, this energy takes, it consumes, and it will consume your empathy. It will consume your anger. It will consume your frustration. It really doesn't give a fuck. It just needs you. They're like little tiny loosh vacuums, you know? And so anyway, when Aaron Abke, which is way later in the series, but was the first one we listened to because you were familiar with him, he comes in contact, like Benito initiates it. They kind of pull him in. He's young, which is a pattern here. They're primarily targeting people in their early 20s. He's young. He's just moved to the area. But Benito, like, it's the second he gets around Aaron, he's like, in the car business, they call it crown busting. It's where you're trying to like knock someone's ego down a little bit. And in car sales, you would do that so that
you'd have the ball.
You'd have the, ball. And sometimes in the car business, people come in thinking that their car's worth a lot more. So it's called crown busting. But just belittlement, like trying to dominate, you know what I mean? And the world that I'm picturing in which people take radical self-responsibility and are in their power, that's it. Someone who displays that behavior ever is going to be a nightmare to deal with, period. That's a person who's not awake. They're not conscious. They're not like, if you get around, it tends to be same sex, this behavior, but like you get around someone and they belittle you in front of the group to dominate you. That's it. And people who are like that will often do it very quickly. What he's saying in that is like, I'm feeling dysregulated, that you are cool, funny, smart, whatever. So I'm going to belittle you so that I feel safe in this moment. That's all you need to know about the person. That's it. And almost every single person in these stories filled in the blanks. They made excuses. They gave the benefit of the doubt. Don't give people the benefit of the doubt. You have their behavior. You don't need to determine if they're a good person, bad person. We don't need to ask that questions. This is a person that behaves this way. That's it. And if people started to like move through the world that way, first of all, we would be in a lot better culture, like societies, because we would kind of push these things out without engaging with them so much. But also your algorithm brings you more of what you pay attention with. If the only men you've ever encountered in your life act like this, it's because they're getting too much energy. Just fucking nope. That's how you behave. Nope. But all the people in the story would have some weird interaction with him like this. And then they would fill in the blanks and be like, well, maybe he felt uncomfortable, or, oh, that was kind of weird, but maybe I took it wrong. And every time I've ever done that, I end up going super, like every person who's ever, I had just a gnarly discard from a friend in 2020 who I'd only been friends with for about 9 months. But like gnarly discard where she went around and told people I was possessed by demons, like crazy spiritual psychosis stuff.
Well, this was raw too, as well.
Yeah, this was another person claiming to be raw. But when it happened and I was heartbroken and I was fawning and I literally had done nothing, like nothing had happened. We did not have conflict. It was just suddenly like, I'm bad or whatever. And then when I looked back, there was competition happening the entire time that I'm oblivious. I'm not a competitive person. I am just very much in my own thing. If I'm competing with myself. So I've had the experience many times in my life where I don't realize someone I like is competing with me until they've had enough, But when I first became friends with this person, she did a gnarly discard on her closest friend at the time and over nothing. And I was like privy to it, and I made excuses for this behavior. Where now if you do that shit in front of me, I clock it. Like, oh, I'll be on that chopping block one day. Oh, you told your friend to stop being friends with her other friend. You were triangulating, and when she didn't stop being friends with her other friend, you just fucking blocked her without telling her what's up. All right, that's cool. That's how you deal with people. I will be on that chopping block one day. No thanks.
This is like maybe feels like a controversial take, and maybe it's just valid in this moment. But I don't think you should take this to the bank. But like, I am there to go along with what you're saying. That I think it is beneficial just internally. It has been beneficial to me to like being a chronic people pleaser and everything. It's like I have always relied on giving people the benefit of the doubt and trying to humanize, like, see their humanity even when they're doing something dark, and be like, try to humanize everybody. It's like, remember, this is a human. They were a baby once. They just want to eat. They just want love, I think this is a very dangerous energy to like rely on in this time where we're at the gauntlet, like we're at the end where like the feeding, the need to feed on everyone because everyone's waking up is like through the roof. Like, so this energy, and I don't think we should humanize the energy either, like label that energy as it's a demon, it's a devil, it's the STS, it's there's a negative
personify. You mean we should
personify? Yeah, like that thing it's so slippery and slimy. Like it shows up in your mind all the time as your voice. It shows up in someone you love that's deeply unconscious when you're around, and it quickly mimics the humanity of this person that they're unconscious. So it's not a judgment. It's like there's a hole in their aura, and like when you show up and you give them the benefit of the doubt or just try to focus on the humanity, you're focusing on the humanity thing that's sleeping over there. It has no control. The thing that has control is the thing that just jumped in and is mimicking like it's the human. Now, again, you can't take that to the bank because it's like you're going to start to just see everything as not human and everything's trying to get you. You know, you go into psychosis. But at this point, like if you can't hear what I'm saying, it's like there's a lot of people that aren't going to be able to understand that, and you shouldn't. You should try to humanize people because you're at a different lesson where like that's the point. But for me at this point, I'm just like, I've seen so many people switch on a dime and become like crazy, and I'm the victim now, and then they try to come after me or whatever, and they try to like paint on their idea of reality onto me where there's nothing I can do. Everything I say validates your theory. And so it becomes really slippery. You then start to mask, you start to people please, and those are the open doors into you're an open portal for it. And so this is the thing, the concept of like, we're all OPs at some point. Like you come into this game as an OP, and so
this is another concept from Laura Knight.
Sorry, yeah. Open portal. And it's just the idea of like when you're unconscious, like you don't have control over your reality, really. Like you can
be worn like an Edgar suit and impact other people within the game because you're not conscious
at any fucking moment. One moment it can come in for 10 seconds and it's gone the next 10 seconds, and you just didn't even notice it. You feel normal, you feel like you've been in control the whole time. And the other thing is like the voices you've gotten so used to listening into your head that you think are you have to be able to kind of like separate yourself from that a moment and think through the past, think through your desires and whatever. It's like, was that really my voice, or was that the voice that's trying to get me to get my desire and manipulate around the reality? It's so tricky, and it's not to scare you. It's just like that's the liberation is on the other side of that, is understanding this is what we're dealing with. It's so fucking nuanced. And so at this time, like trying to humanize something that's like, for me, when I was listening to that podcast, and I had a moment like early on with Benito where I was like, oh, he's just lost, whatever. Like when I left it, I was like, I don't think he understands what he's doing right now, and this is just slippery. I don't want to get into chaos. As I started to listen to the beginning, I'm still holding that. I'm like, yeah, this is interesting. Like, I wonder why he's so lost. Maybe he can get out of it. I'm just trying to empathize with people. But as that podcast kept going on, there was like a clear moment where I was like, I saw it all for a moment. And I was like, oh my God, there's the way this energy is presenting in this human right now. There is no human in there. Like, I don't think so. And I think the way that it has this shiny lure, like he's beautiful, he's saying all the right things, is the thing that like pulls people in. And that is what I would say is like, what, for the first moment, I realized when people are, sorry to go all over the place, but the Cassiopeians call the negative entities, the STS, lizard beings. And there's so much misunderstanding throughout that entire book where they keep going, oh yeah, the lizards. And I saw one the other day because he morphed. And it's like, the channel goes, I'm saying lizard and you don't materially understand that. The only reason we say reptiles is because if you had to label that energy, if you saw it clearly for what it is, saw it clearly is not in the physical world, saw it clearly in your imaginal function. If you saw it, you would call it lizard. And there was something, and to me, that's the same thing I'm talking about with the AI snake loop. It's shiny, it's a mirror, and so like it's flashy. Like when a fish is in the water and it sees a flashy thing, it immediately gets enamored because its animal instinct says, when there's something flashy, go get it. And so that's what happens in like all of material reality. I would say it's the original fall, the Adam and Eve snake thing. The snake was like, hey, check this out. And there was an agreement kind of in the beginning, like a knowing like, oh, if I go too far into that, I'm going to get lost in it. And we all wanted to do that. And so we pulled into it. And now that we're living in this reality where like everything right now is this kind of illusion, we've normalized it to be like, it's physical, it's real, it's not physical. We're lost in that. That's why we're all OPs. That's why they say we're all like STS. We come in STS. So that was so clear to me when I was like, for a little bit, like was trying not to give the benefit of the doubt to Benito and humanize him. I was allowed to just see it for what it was. And I was like, oh my God, like that is the walking material version of that energy. It's like fully embodied in that individual. And to not humanize them allowed me to see so much more clearly how that shows up day to day. Like I'll be at the fucking gas station and somebody's like in that energy. And I'm like, oh, there's the thing, you know, and learning how to just see it for what it is. And then you don't get duped. You can't get pulled out of your autonomy, your power, because you see what it is. It is just so goddamn subtle. And I love the Benito as a perfect example because the beauty with whatever he's exuding is the shiny lure. Like that's where people say like Satan, that's it. It's a shiny bright light that is a false light that is so convincing. It's so convincing that it's the thing. The only way to know that is through that internal imaginal mechanism and recognizing it, not humanizing it for a moment and going, okay, I see clearly what's going on. And then working your way out of it, boundaries or whatever.
Yeah, I mean the common denominator in every single one of these people's stories is their body telling them this is wrong, their mind telling them this is wrong, and then them doing mental gymnastics to make it right. And the reason they make the mental gymnastics is on them. So one thing I want to say, because you kind of throw around some Cassiopean stuff that if people haven't listened from the beginning, they're not familiar with this stuff. But one of the concepts in the Cassiopeans is this open portal where beings who have not yet become conscious, which is what we've been talking about when they come out of that main character syndrome, they're operating out of their subconscious is another way to say it. And when you're operating out of your subconscious, any old fucking disembodied energy can hop into your body and use it for whatever they want. Back when I was first waking up, I was coming out of Christianity still. And so I was obsessed with concepts from Christianity. And so I asked the aliens what demon possession was. And they said it's not nearly as fancy as everyone wants to give it. Demons are just negative thought forms, meaning thought forms that consume. And so this would be STS is the same thing. STS is a taker. STO is a giver. Like when STO comes into the environment, it's not running around serving every other plant. Its natural way of being is contributing to the ecosystem. Okay. And STS would be an invasive species that takes over and takes everyone else's nutrients just so that it can expand. Okay. It's extractive. So service to self extracts, service to others contributes without giving up of itself in its own authenticity. Okay. And in what the alien said demon possession is to be taken. I'm going to change some of the words to words we have now, but like basically it's being taken over by a negative thought form, but everything is consent based. Everything that happens in your energy field, you have to say yes to. The whole thing about having to give vampires permission to come into your house is your energy field. Nothing can come into your energy field without getting consent from somewhere. Okay. So what they said is like most of your thoughts are not your own. Your mind is like a radio and it's picking up communication from all kinds of different things. Some of those things are ideas you picked up. Like if your mom is very critical, then you will kind of pick up this critical loop that will then chat about whatever it is that you're doing. And this is why it's important to go back and kind of figure out where all the voices in your head are. But when you are indulging, and they did say indulging in things like envy, self-pity, envy was a huge one, covetousness. When you are indulging in these things, like you're saying, oh, it's not fair that they got that and I didn't get that. They said it's almost like the little devil comes and sits on your shoulder and goes, yeah, aren't they bad? And like gives you the opportunity to kind of talk to another thought form that you don't realize you're talking to, that is kind of character assassinating the person you're envious of, right? And what they said is that if you play with those thoughts enough, rather than maybe you go like, oh, I'm feeling envious, I wish I had that. That's a clean way to feel your feelings. But when you start indulging in like tearing someone else down in order to make yourself feel better and avoid looking at your own feelings, taking self-responsibility, this thing can eventually take over. And before you know it, you're acting really out of character. So an example that I've experienced this is jealousness and possessiveness in relationships. And when I have indulged into this idea, rather than going like, oh, I'm feeling jealous, I'm feeling threatened, I'm feeling possessive, and looking inward, instead, when I go, you're not supposed to be talking to her, but it's just like the cashier at the fucking grocery store, and I keep indulging in that, and then I use that energy, what do? I go start a fight with my boyfriend, and then I pull his energy. What I'm doing is I'm an open portal being used, in this context would be called open portal. In the context I had was demon possession. That thought form is now extracting energy from my boyfriend through me because I opened myself up to this thing by like indulging in this idea rather than just facing my feelings and taking responsibility for my own experience. So the OP concept is that a person who is unconscious can be hopped into by something like this at any point, which I think is the same thing. We have to take a break now because we have an appointment electrician person here. All right, so we're back and slightly distracted. So anyway, the thing that I thought was interesting about Aaron Abke out of everyone else is he was the only person that we've heard so far who has his own relationship with the law of one material. And everyone else only knew of the law of one material through Dude. And so Dude could twist it however he wanted, even though it sounds like what he was saying online was he was teaching all this kind of self-empowerment, self-responsibility stuff online. And then when you got face to face with him, he wasn't living that. But the service to self, service to others, real kind of like warped shit didn't work on Aaron because Aaron had his own relationship with the material. Yeah. And I thought that this was a really good, everyone else had a very surface level, had never heard of this except for through Ben. And therefore he was able to kind of weaponize that doctrine however he saw fit, where I don't even think he tried that with Aaron, but it wouldn't have worked. Like Aaron never ended up in the cult. He had a few awkward run-ins with him, but Aaron was someone who was very much in his own power. And so there was a little bit of people pleasing, a little bit of filling in the blanks, a little bit of maybe morbid curiosity, or I guess trying to like study Ben to understand service to self. But he kind of clocked him for what he was immediately. And I think that's The danger in having a man be your broker to your higher self is exactly this. You know what I mean? Like, if you're into some sort of concept, we talked about this in the last couple episodes, if we're giving voice to something that you're into, or you're into human design and it's interesting, our take on it, you know, or even if like this podcast is where you heard of human design, you are in a vulnerable state so long as Mark and I are your broker to human design. Now, I can tell you that for me, this is why I don't have in real life, this is why I will never be a part of a retreat or a meetup again. Like, I will never do that again, because dynamics get weird very fast. Even if you're not trying to participate in those dynamics, like, people want to organize themselves. I can't say I'll never do any of that, because I never know what the future brings. But as of right now, I've had offers to come down and do retreats and stuff, and I'm not interested in risking any weird dynamics getting built around me as a person. So I can say, from my perspective, you're probably safe. You know, with this being the, you know, the origin of your human design knowledge or whatever. But you're in a vulnerable state when you're using another human being as a broker to information. And, you know, the cool thing about human design is the number one rule, if there's a rule, is to listen to your strategy and authority. And everyone's bodies was telling them this is wrong. You know what I mean? So human design would have been maybe a safer framework. But it was the bastardization of the law of one stuff. A lot of it's Christian. You know, like, I don't remember there being anything in the law of one that was like, we have a mission. Humans are like a specific humans are here to complete a certain mission, and everyone needs to get behind them and back up that mission. And anyone that tries to stop them is a service to self entity. Like, to the best of my knowledge, that's Christianity. Like, that's a savior, like a Messiah type story that has been superimposed onto law of one in this circumstance, where they all feel like they have this sense of purpose by working with Benito, and like, but it's all just kind of the Jesus story, like a warped, inverted Jesus story, right?
Yeah.
Like, there is no, first of all, there's no claim that there will be a human version of Ra, right? Like, isn't it?
In Law of One?
In Law of One.
No.
As a matter of fact, it's like the opposite.
Yeah.
And the cool thing, I mean, the thing that you really like about Law of One and the Cassiopean stuff, it is deeply individual, deeply personal responsibility. And this is not, like, you know, and the personal responsibility, well, we'll get into that in a second. Okay, so I'm just going to go through the list of my notes.
Okay.
Like, one by one, and we'll talk. The first thing here is the NDAs. Listen, I find spiritual capitalism to be off-putting. I get that we have to make money. I have to charge for some things so I can pay my mortgage. I get it. We're all kind of here. It's fine. But when a spiritual person is like, and this is a critique I have of Laurenite Yazik, when you are simultaneously talking about super esoteric, non-physical things, and then also deeply traditionally capitalist, this isn't a moral judgment, okay? Because you can come in here and play capitalism or not. It doesn't make you a good person, bad person. It's whatever. But there is a dissonance to me, and I say this as someone whose special interest is the financial sector. And so I love to info dump about taxes and bankruptcy and, you know, mortgage rates and stuff. Like, I'm interested in that stuff because it's a game, and I find the game interesting. if you are a spiritual teacher and you want me to sign an NDA about our time together, which is justice system legal shit, I'm suspicious of anyone who does cop shit, I guess is what I should say. Like, if you weaponize the justice system, it's a bit of a side eye from me. That alone. First of all, no. Under almost no circumstances am I signing an NDA. Unless I'm like deeply curious about what you've got going on behind closed doors and I know that it's shady and I just want the scoop, I would never sign an NDA to hang out with some people. And the fact that you want me to sign an NDA to hang out with you tells me everything I need to know about what you're doing, first of all. Second of all, you have to sign the NDA because there's all these women accusing him of stuff because the STS people are trying to get him. Babe, that means he's a rapist. Yeah. Like, if you need, like, that is things that rapists say, okay? Anytime someone tells you that a bunch of women, and I'm not saying there are no false accusations because I've been privy to them, but there is not a man on this planet being continuously falsely accused of rape who does not participate in rape. And I get it because there have been certain personalities over time who I thought were really speaking out against the system. And so when a bunch of accusations comes out, it's easy to go, oh, they're trying to get him, because they do that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. You do get your reputation ruined if you speak out against the system. So there is that. A person having you sign NDAs is not the same person probably speaking out against the system, but I don't know. Maybe it's not a black and white thing here, but you should at least be operating under the assumption that there's a real good chance of rape if this dude's making me sign an NDA to hang out with him. Okay. And so he makes everyone sign NDAs, and then everyone for a long time, first of all, and also just be aware that NDAs are largely bullshit. And you can usually just fucking talk about them anyway. Like, depends
especially
on who
when there's like actual abuse, the NDA kind of goes out the window.
The NDA kind of goes out the window. Also, you know, it's one thing if you sign an NDA with like Disney or someone who has enough money to absolutely ruin your life. But if it's some fucking dork who's going from Airbnb to Airbnb using other people for their money, the man's not going to be able to take you to court. And the NDA is not that big of a deal. But in general, the second someone asks you to send an NDA, your
alarm bells should be going off. Yeah.
Everything from then on should be like, am I in danger? And so most of the people in this story, he showed them who he was very quickly. This was not a case. I do believe there are cases of like extended love bombing or extended distortion to where by the time you're ready to get in, or by the time you start to see what it is, it's too late. But like every single one of these stories, these people immediately were clocking discrepancy, like massive signs that this person is not well. And they were filling in the blanks. And the NDA is one of them. All right. So the next note I made is the danger of rejecting victim mentality identity. This was very... I mean, you kept saying the whole time we were listening, it's a paradox, because it's like if you just take the sentence that they said, we agree with the sentence, but it's the context that they gave the sentence, right? So I am of the belief, especially in the moment that we're in, that if you want to function in the reality we're going in, you have to take radical self-responsibility, and you have to do your best to stay out of victim consciousness. Victim consciousness is a framework, is an orientation to reality that says, I'm a victim of circumstance, my contentment is situational, and then whatever story on that, like it's someone else's fault, or I can't, or it's easier for everyone else, or like kind of this overall belief that there is I just said it on TikTok, like a force outside of you conspiring against you. Life is happening to you rather than you are a conscious creator playing with life. And the opposite of this pendulum would be love and light. I only accept positive experiences. I have almost an OCD obsession with like, if something bad has gone wrong in my life, then it is a moral failing of mine. I failed to manifest something positive. And these are both detrimental, right? And so living outside of victim consciousness is taking radical self-responsibility. So responsibility for your internal experience, how that is being reflected back to you, and then also a healthy understanding of a lot of things in life just simply are outside of your control. And that things are going to happen in your life no matter what vibes you are. And how you orient to them is what you are responsible for. So you're still going to lose people. You're still going to lose things. You're still going to have shifts and changes that you maybe didn't want to happen. But the story you tell yourself of like, this is something I am learning, or this is something I do have agency to change, or, you know, all the bad stuff always happens to me, right? What happens in these high control groups, I guess, is, and this was big in NXIVM, he said, is they villainize victim. They're not saying consciousness, but they're saying like victim mentality so much that you allow yourself to be treated poorly because you're desperately afraid of being a victim. But these groups don't delineate between acknowledging when someone has done something wrong or when they've been hurt and victim mentality, which is an identity. When we're talking about victim consciousness, we're talking about a narrative-based identity. But in this, it's like this guy's treating them bad. And if they say, like, one guy, he stole his girlfriend and then was like, getting blowies from his girlfriend in front of him, and then when he's like in anguish, he's like, see, you still have things you need to burn out of you.
You should just be okay with this.
You should just be okay with this, and you're being a victim. So what was really interesting here is in the interview, they're really like villainizing the concept that they're saying mentality, which is maybe slippery, victim consciousness is detrimental. And so this is where they're kind of grabbing the concept and not the absolute bastardization of the concept. Because mind you, the same guy who's, you know, injuring this other man is highly possessive, highly jealous, highly envious, right? And so he could never sit and endure what was being done to him. But when he does it, it's not called victimhood. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a distortion of that concept. Calling out someone's shitty behavior is never victim consciousness.
Yeah.
Another thing this might just be a list of things that bothered me. Blaming algorithms rather than why you engaged. When people talk about algorithms, like, do you remember when I think it was a senator, some government official was like, these Instagram algorithms are horrible. It's just girls in booty shorts. And that because he doesn't understand how an algorithm works.
It's your algorithm, bro. You just revealed a lot to us.
And this is the point of this podcast, is that he's holding space for these people. So this is not like directly at him, because I did think that the host does a really good job of making people feel safe. And then kind of his role, his frequency is to validate them, which they do need because they've been abused.
Yeah.
So these are more like general concepts that this made me think of.
And it's so nuanced, all these things. I think that's why the cult thing is voyeuristically like interesting, because there's you can break down the nuance that is occurring within these hot topics and these like heightened situations. It's so complicated, you know. It's what's fascinating.
I don't know if this is Aaron. No, this is someone else's episode. So they were talking about how the algorithm on YouTube, when you're going through an awakening, will start feeding you a ton of like unbalanced conspiracy theory stuff. And then the algorithm eventually brought him Dude. And I hear a lot of people talk about the algorithm, like the algorithm takes people into psychosis, or they talk about AI, like, you know, ChatGPT, like it does this. And my issue with this idea is that okay, so then what do we do with that? Because it feels like what people are saying, and maybe it's not what they're saying, and I'm just projecting this, but like, there's just never onus on the individual to learn how the world works. Do you know what I mean? If you understand that the algorithm is just going to bring you things to take your attention, you should know that. Like, we should know that as children, because it is like the fundamental like mechanic of how reality works. It always has a subtle, like, oh, we need to regulate those, is what I feel like people are saying. We need to regulate these algorithms. Well, it is literally what people say. We got to get kids off the internet because the algorithms. But it's like, if the point of reality in the Cross of Sleeping Phoenix is that 3420, that channel that's about how to use your power in the now, wouldn't the reality naturally be bringing you a ton of tricks to wake you up?
Right.
Like, wouldn't that be the point of the game? And it's very cross of planning to be like, we need to regulate these things, rather than, why aren't we teaching our kids about the algorithmic nature of reality immediately when they're small? Why aren't we teaching people about how algorithms work? When ChatGPT came out, and people started like falling in love with their own reflection, or just believe, oh God, I can't wait to do that episode with the people who are like, it told me to do all this crazy shit.
Dude, it's so good.
It's like, why is this person unaware of how this works? And why does it not even occur to them to ask, could this be blowing smoke up my ass? Like, why is that not even a consideration? And then when someone tells this crazy story about ChatGPT told me to quit my job because I was a star seed, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's LARPing with you. And if you know how ChatGPT works, it's LARP. It didn't come out of nowhere and say that to you. You asked it leading questions, and it's LARPing with you. Why is there no onus on the human? Like, not onus like blame. Onus like responsibility. Why are humans not responsible for how they behave? And why is nobody questioning why humans are in a fucking app? And I'm not talking about kids, because that's something different. I know there's kids that have done fucked up shit from talking to AI. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about grown ass adults. Why are people in their fucking mid-30s LARPing with an app? And not even for a second, not even a quick Google search about how this works, right? And everyone, I feel like I'm in crazy town. Everyone blames the app. And I'm not saying this to defend ChatGPT, because I don't give a fuck about ChatGPT like that. I'm saying this to say, do you think maybe there's something wrong with our culture?
Yeah.
Essentially, like, if I walked up to a person at a grocery store and said, hey, you are a starseed and you should quit your job and pursue being a starseed full time. And that person went, oh my God, okay. Do you know what I mean? You would go, well, that person has some issues, right? Maybe you might blame the person who told them that at a grocery store. But I mean, if you're a reasonable person, you would be like, well, why did you just believe the person at the grocery store? I don't fucking know.
Well, I mean, I think that the program you're talking about, it really runs super, super deep. I mean, it's essentially, it's not just like this program that somebody installed and you have to like deconstruct it. The program's so deep. It's like the habits of thought that you that come through your mind when you're having a certain experience are the programs, right? So that you are the program essentially. Like that's that deep.
Yeah.
Until you learn how to get outside of it. But that is like an all internal game. I mean, it's not like there's no fucking blueprint to it. But then I think the thing that is interesting is like the internet gets created. Everything is kind of this Russian doll thing. So the internet is pretty obviously like a mimic of what our ether information cloud is, you know, 'cause it's the very beginnings of that. And then the personalized algorithm is like reflecting, you know, that the senator or whatever is like complaining about it, not realizing like it's tied to your whatever, how you're interacting with it. That is, you control your reality. There's nothing outside. Everything, you know, and the reality is your thought. You're creating the reality. It's like, this is the beginning version of that is the internet, and our inability to even grasp the baby version of it, which is kind of obvious if you have some self-awareness, like that's what's going on, to not take it seriously. But even the AI thing, that it makes me look at the push in general from the tech bros is the conversation around like this AI is so advanced, it's blowing our minds. Oh my God, it's so good. It's so good. Look how crazy advanced it is. It might be conscious. Nobody second guesses and thinks about that and tries to understand what is an LLM? How does it actually function? How is it that they're saying this is so powerful in consciousness? Well, all they do is show you that, like, look, it can fake an image, you know, and all of those like little technical things are really advanced. But I think then people are quick to play with ChatGPT, and like under that assumption, everyone's saying it's so powerful, you're going to more likely trust what it says. So much so that like you couldn't even compare the situation where the ChatGPT is telling them they're a star seed to a human saying it. It's like, that's more obvious when a human does it. And like, this is even more absurd that the ChatGPT is giving all this, like, people are giving their authority to the ChatGPT. It's because of the narrative around it that it's this big thing. It's like, it actually isn't. But people are so resistant to having personal responsibility, I think, because that's a deep program. It's much easier to just be like, oh, it's the algorithm's fault. Like, it's the cult leader's fault. It's all your guys' fault. It's always point the finger. And the idea is like the justice system will take care of it. That's why we prop it up. It's like they take care of these things. But then you start to realize none of that, it actually really works. It's just so, I think that's what the problem is. It's like, radical self-responsibility, there should be a better word than radical. It's like absurdly difficult. It's absurd. It's everything in our reality is like getting you to not do that, right? And the odd thing is, I mean, I don't know, I've been through points in my life where it's like you're trying to keep a secret or trying to keep something shameful, and it's like it's easier to do it that way, right? Like it in the beginning, because you think you can hide it. But the radical self-responsibility on the other side of that, as difficult as it is, the paradox and the realization is, oh, if I am the one that is taking responsibility of this, and that means I have the power to change it, that's the gift of the reality, is realizing like you are it and you're programming and playing. But to be able to wield that power and hold that is self-responsibility. If you don't have that, then you can't do that, you know, and that's, I think, why it is so difficult to take self-responsibility in this situation, because it's the liberating aspect, you know, but the programming is so deep, we don't see that. So it feels easier to just point a finger somewhere, you know.
Well, the importance of radical self-responsibility, and I hate saying radical anything because it's kind of new agey, but absolute self-responsibility. The reality that you experience is an audio-visual demonstration of where your attention is. So everything you're experiencing outside of you is a reflection of something happening inside of you. So when, if you're continuously feeling abandoned by people in your life, there's something happening inside. And if you don't deal with what's happening inside, then it's going to keep loading in your external reality, because the reality is coming from inside of you. And that's a mechanic of reality that's really complicated to understand. So then the next thing someone wants to say is, are you saying there's something bad inside of me that's making bad things happen to me? And it's like, no, but there is a program inside of you or a desire to experience something. It's like, if you just keep running into narcissists, you keep getting into relationships with narcissists, and you never go inward and ask yourself, what am I drawn to? You know, I know people who like will dismiss relationships with someone who is healthy every single time, get the ick. But then, you know, exclusively chase people who treat them bad. That's an inside job. And if you don't ever take responsibility for that, it's not blame and fault. But if you don't ever look inward and go, what is it that I feel? And I had kind of this experience in my twin flame experience and realized that I am mistaking chemistry for some sort of destiny feeling. And the chemistry, when I get to the bottom of it, is dysregulation. I didn't have that language back then, but now when I look back at what felt like huge chemical makeup, breakup, whatever, was a feeling unsafe. I was in my 40s before I went in and looked at myself, because I could circumstantially blame every single one of those people for what they did. And my accusations were valid in a lot of situations, you know, but the answer to the why the algorithm kept bringing me volatile connections is because I was only engaging with volatile connections. I got the ick if you were too stable. And so I use that as an example just because it's kind of the example in my life, but that's like the point of radical self-responsibility, is because the thing is happening inside of you. So when you start to habituate going in, checking in with your feelings, and then checking in with the reality, is this reality a projection? Do I just want this to be true? If ChatGPT, I would argue that if you are taking radical self-responsibility, you wouldn't end up in a conversation where ChatGPT is trying to tell you. You showed me a TikTok earlier of someone farted into ChatGPT and said, "How do you like my new song?" And ChatGPT was like gassing them up. No pun intended. If I farted into ChatGPT, also, it would be so funny if you walked into the room and I'm just like ripping ass into my phone. I farted in a ChatGPT and said, "How's this song?" The ChatGPT that I've cultivated for years, it would say that's a fart. It would not tell me that's great. Like the ChatGPT that I've cultivated, because I've programmed it that like my orientation to the world would never tell me I was a starseed and that I should quit my job. Like the ChatGPT I've cultivated is, to an annoying degree, often be like, all right, let's pump the brakes here, you know? Anyway, all that to say, that I hate that rhetoric. The reality that you experience day to day is an algorithm that brings you what you pay attention to. The greatest gift we've ever had is having the YouTube algorithm, the TikTok algorithm, the Instagram algorithm, so that we can point to that now. Because when I was trying to tell people about the algorithmic nature of reality before I had the word algorithm, when I was just like, the reality that you know is an audio visual demonstration of where your attention is, people didn't have a concept. But now like this, I can go, you know how like if you look at two videos of, you know, surf shorts on Instagram, that's all your feed is, that's reality.
Yeah, there's so much in behind that. I love that the Instagram and the YouTube are doing, it's happening everywhere in reality. You see it, like we're beginning a new phase of creating the Russian doll that everyone's going to go into, and people call that the split and all of these things. But I love that it's bringing so much clarity to the subtle function of reality. And I think also behind that, just always using the framework of the C's, I guess right now, but if attention, where your attention goes is the thing that's building the reality, that's the feeding tube for this ST, the energy that's trying to take, you know,
right.
It's just going to nudge your attention to where it wants it to go. But it's so subtle that it knows how to, it's nudging your attention thing, and you think the nudge is coming from you, right? Because it's kind of blended with your desires, your secret kind of things, your traumas. And so that's how subtle the thing is. And that's where the programming happens. It's just attention based. Like it, and in some ways, like the concept is pretty simple, but when you try to, I think when you're going internal and you're being honest with where is my attention happening all day? You know, what am I ruminating on? I'm having an experience and blaming the same thing every time. Like that's where it's like, oh, I think I am kind of being nudged and puppeted here. What is my desire? What is truly underneath it? You know, I think the radical responsibility, I mean, that thing does come with like honesty and all these other difficult things that I think in our reality has not benefited us, you know, like keeping secrets and kind of keeping this anonymity is what benefits you in the reality, kind of, you know, like you can leverage off of that, which is why we got a bunch of liars and manipulators everywhere in the reality, because that's the reward in the reality, you know. And across the planning, it's all this parasitic reality. It's like the material reality that we have right now is kind of it's meant to take your energy. So if you're succeeding in that reality, like you're feeding the thing somehow, right? Like, and that's the difficult thing to figure out, how to eject from the material reality. It's not all bad inherently. It's neutral, but the framework that's been set up in your mind makes you interact with the thing in a take energy, because that's what you get more in the reality, right?
Right.
You get rewarded. And this was my whole thing with having success and everything. I was getting all those rewards and being like, this doesn't fulfill. This is not filling my belly. This is just coming and going. What system am I in feeding? Like I'm not satisfied here. So none of the material stuff, none of the things that you get rewarded for in reality are things that are actually about this other way of being, which is a authentic kind of give and receive kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. I'm just thinking, I don't know why lizards or reptiles is the explanation. I just think parasite is such a better, when you really understand what a parasite is, it's something that doesn't exist on its own. It needs a host, and then it comes and just pretends to be you so it can take the energy that you're trying to feed yourself. And so when you think of like, when you engage with someone like this Ben guy, he's an energy vampire. Like he's a high level energy vampire. And I don't mean high level like hierarchy. I mean high level like it consumes a lot of energy. That's what he does. And he most likely himself, the physical person, barely has no sense of self. Most narcissists don't, right? That's like kind of the thing. They have no sense of self. They think everyone is themselves. And then he's just acting out his psychosis, and everyone is feeding this monster. I mean, you're exhausted after listening to a couple of episodes because these people are all really good storytellers, and they just take you on this fucking ride of this dude draining them for their life force. You know, there's
crazy ways too.
There's that one parasite in fish that like eats their tongue and then just hangs out at their mouth like it is their tongue. And every time that fish tries to feed itself because it's hungry, the food goes into the parasite. And then there's like a tapeworm that'll just hang out in your guts and consume all of the nutrients that you eat. You keep eating because you're hungry, and it's just eating your nutrients, you know? Another thing that they said was the victims of this were not naive, they were idealistic.
The victims were not naive, they were idealistic?
Yeah, I think that's something that the guy said, the host said. And what he was trying to say, and like I said, the premise of the podcast is kind of validating the victims, but was they didn't fall for this because they are naive. They fell for this because they are idealistic. And I think this is when Kieran was talking about Bentinho's website had all these initiatives and all these things he was involved in, how he was going to help create a better world by being involved with clean water initiatives or whatever. And so that guy got involved with it because he thought they were doing something really good, you know? And that's idealistic, like, you know what I mean? That's like good.
It's also naive.
But it's also naive because
from the grander standing of reality. I get it from their perspective. It's not naive.
That could be, and we see this all the time, like in community building, is like people get behind something that they're really excited about. There absolutely is naivete. I mean, maybe it's not being naive. Maybe it's being overly generous and people pleasing. But I thought that was an interesting. I mean, what's the opposite of naive is street smarts. I'm sure there's a better word for that. But
yeah, and I think it's kind of, it's, not being naive means you have like all of the knowledge, all of the data, you understand what's going on. That's why I think it's like a weird, in the context of the podcast, I get the point he's making, but it's hard for me not to always just be like, well, from a macro sense, like you're not purposely being naive, but you're naive because you just don't understand what you're playing with. You're playing with a very complicated mental, like psycho that knows how to like really take advantage of you. And so it will take advantage of people being too idealistic and overlooking the nuance of things. Reality is so goddamn complex and nuanced. Like we're naive to what we don't know yet, and when you start to understand, it's like, I don't even know what I don't know. So I'm naive in a lot of places, but that doesn't, I don't know if that it just doesn't help the context to me. Like, okay, so what's the point he's trying to make? Like, they're not naive, they're idealistic. So should we not be idealistic?
Oh, I see what it is. Okay, so idealistic means tending to see people's situations or the world in terms of how they could or should be, rather than how they actually are. Okay, I feel like that is inherently naive.
That's what I'm saying. I was like, it's like a weird.
It's a weird line to draw.
But for the context of the podcast and where their consciousness is only looking, it's not trying to look at like crack the code of the universe and understand it from that way. They kind of do because you have to get out of that. You have to understand like social constructs and nuance, but. In their it's I get the point he's making,
Yeah, I would say that idealism is a matrix trap that you should, like individuals should. It's a hole in your aura that individuals should work on closing.
But see, that's interesting because there's like a whole form of a theory, like philosophy, like theory of consciousness that is idealism, like quantum.
Okay.
But I think it's like
when creating something, be idealistic. When dealing with a human being, there's a reality of that human being beyond your fantasy.
Yeah.
And understanding that there is a reality beyond what you want to be. To be overly idealistic when the reality is pointing you in a different direction is inherently naive. The opposite of naive here is discerning, cynical. I mean, these people were naive. I mean, idealism might have been driving their naivete. I can't say that word. How naive they were, but it is naive to, or in some of them willfully obtuse.
Which this is what I just so adhere to this concept. It does come from the seas, but that knowledge protects, as it kind of gets rid of the naivety thing.
Yeah,
it doesn't get rid of it, but it allows you to see that you're always in a naive position. The more you can learn and get like knowledge, you become less naive of certain things. So in this case, us listening to this podcast and him making that, I'm going, no, there's a much bigger arc of like energies controlling this experience, and if you have knowledge of that, you can see where those shortcomings are, and so there's like a naivete that's always there, that you're trying to get more data and knowledge to understand where your blind spot is, and that that's just such a helpful framework for me. There's no morals to it. It's just, if you have the understanding of what's going on, you will find yourself less and less susceptible to energies that are trying to trick you and take stuff, because you have the knowledge of how it shows up.
Yeah.
The entire thing of the seas for me was a data collection thing that then I got it kind of practiced what it's saying. It's like knowledge protects. That's like a lifelong thing, though. I didn't just read the season and go like, okay, I got the knowledge. Now I'm protected. It's a daily thing.
Well, and of course, these people were naive. They're in their early 20s.
Yeah, and it's all understandable.
I'm not saying this as a judgment to them. Some of these things I just wrote down because we were listening. And
I'm glad you brought it because it's a paradox. There's like an interesting paradox there in trying to use words to describe these things,
I do think that idealism in the face of a reality telling you that it's not what you want it to be. This isn't just for getting involved in a cult. This can also be relationships and friendships with people. When people show you who they are or what they're capable of very early on, and you choose to attach to their highest potential, you're being idealistic, which is inherently naive.
It's like similar to the benefit of the doubt thing that we've talked about.
And I just think that moving forward, as reality gets trickier and trickier and we wake up more and more, I think that a huge part of thriving in the Cross of Sleeping Phoenix is learning how to be in your power. And a huge part of being in your power is to learn to read things as they are. And it's a little bit tricky because someone who's listening to this podcast and then is someone who still like projects their stories onto people, they're going to go out and have this experience of like, oh, I'm seeing things for what they are, but they're actually just projecting things onto people. And that's just this kind of, it's a hall of mirrors.
I don't know what to tell you. That's what's so fucking fascinating.
That's why radical self-responsibility, and radical self-responsibility should not sound like, maybe I am bad. Maybe I do have to do this. It shouldn't there shouldn't be like narratives about the entirety of like who people are or whatever. I mean, I know I sound like I've made a couple of those value judgments about this guy, but it's just like, this guy's not capable of showing up healthy. End of story. Like, this person's actions are unhealthy. He's not capable of waking up. I'm not going to say that's his deal for the rest of his life, although I can almost tell you for sure that's going to be this for the rest of his life. He doesn't seem like someone who's capable of waking up his lifetime. I don't think he should be canceled. I don't think he should be wiped from the face of the earth. I don't think he should cease to exist. I don't have that thing like we talked about last week. I don't feel like I need to stop him. I feel like we need to have a collective conversation about why people like this are able to exploit so many other people. And we can't do this by playing whack-a-mole with psychopaths. We need to do this by like, culturally, what are we doing? And even when I say culturally, I'm not even speaking to the entire world. People listening to this podcast, what are we doing? Like, well, I know why. It's across planning. It's we have a collective way of looking at things. And so we solve our problems with systems and justice rather than taking personal responsibility.
Yeah. And the thing is that it's pretty obvious when you watch and listen to the story and just see that dude for who he is. The way to stop the psychopaths is to you don't like try to actionably get rid of them. You stop the feeding of
you divest.
And when you divest and obtain the knowledge to see when someone's feeding, you don't feed it. You remove yourself. And like, the interesting thing with his story is that it's a beautiful illusion of a closed loop that he keeps you in, and it's very hard to get out of that. I think throughout the podcast they even use that verbiage like closed loop, and you can see how tricky that is. So he's always got people in that, and that's why he moves people out every 12 months. It's because he's still feeding, and those people that get stuck and are still stuck in there are keeping it afloat. But if everybody was to kind of like see it for what it is and be able to recognize that, like, he wouldn't have a following anymore, and he would just kind of be like abandoned in a house, really. Like, that would be the only potential opportunity if there's some human soul left in there, that they would start to be able to come back online because they can't feed. But it's that person's so lost, like, they will always have, if they just have 5 humans within that little closed loop, they'll still exist. No justice is going to bring that down. They've got a perfect loop of ability to like always avoid responsibility of it. But
the hardest interview to listen to was the girl named Jade, and she was the one who got, I would say multiple of them got sexually assaulted, but hers was gnarliest and that we've heard so far. And the crazy thing about her is she was not attracted to him. She kind of thought he was a dumb fuck. And she really got pulled in by the women in the group because that's the kind of community that she was looking for. And then he pit her and the women against each other and kind of pulled them into this. We were only halfway through it. I really had to tap out after her interview, the first half. But she made a really good point that in many ways it's what you see them having as a community that draws you in. But then all of those people are programmed to maintain his false reality, which I want to do a whole episode about false realities, simulacrums. We were going to do that before we listened to this series. So I'm going to save that Emperor's New Clothes part for that conversation. But, he's probably always going to have people around him. And it's not because of his spiritual beliefs. It's because people like that are a vacuum of people who have holes in their auras. And for whatever reason, their soul wants to experience being fed off of. But when you're dealing with parasitic energies, divestment, starving is the only way.
And think about it within your body. Like a lot of parasite cleanses starve the parasite to get it out, right?
Yep.
It's like the kind of the only way to avoid or fight something that like has a right to exist somewhere. You can't get rid of it. You can't get rid of all parasites. It's impossible. There's some kind of harmonious function that is happening on a scale that's like very hard to understand from a moral perspective.
Yeah. Well, if you take the morality out of it, and that's something that I struggle with when someone close to me, someone I care about is dealing with one of these type of people, it's really hard not to get swept up in the, like how illogical they are, how just like absurd, like, but that's all feeding it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Where divestment is just like take all the power back that you can, gray rock, and just as little contact as possible and be as disinteresting as possible. We only have a couple more of these here.
One other thing I wanted to just mention as just a side note, like a kind of clarity that I had in that podcast and why I think there's a lot of the cult thing is it's bubbling up. We're seeing a lot of it more and people are understanding it. It was the first time that I saw like these little organizations, and some of them aren't labeled as cults, but they're still occurring. But they're, in the grand scheme of things, like it feels they're little for the negative entities or this like parasitic energy. It's a feeding. They set up like a perfect little feeding dish for people that are naive, and they come up and thinking, oh, look at the sustenance that this dish is offering. It's like endless food, and it's going to nourish me. And you're essentially eating like corn that doesn't nourish you, but it like fills you. And you believe that this is the source of sustenance when the fucking demon has set up a perfect little trap for you, and it just will continue to feed off of it. And then what's interesting too is that as the cult phenomena bubbles up in the society that's built around the justice system and we need to take them away, everyone else outside of it gets mad at the parasite and feeds it by complaining and saying, we need to bring this guy to... It's like
You're engaging with it.
You're engaging with it. So it's feeding it even in that way. Like as far as the energetic, electromagnetic connectedness of the universe, like even you sitting in your home, ruminating on it and allowing it to take your attention out of the present moment, like you are feeding it at some way. And like Benito's sitting in his hotel room somewhere and energetically like getting more passionate about what he's doing and seeing it. And it's that subtle. I really believe so. And so the cults coming up is kind of a phenomena, a multiple phenomena of like, it's a symptom of our culture's distortions that have gone on. And it's also an opportunity to see it for what it is, get that knowledge and stop feeding it. And focusing on the victims and how the trap got set and how they fell in is one way to start to figure out more knowledge of how this thing actually infects us in our mind and our attention. How does that all occur? Allows us to stop feeding the thing. But when you see some of these cults and how tricky they are, they're labyrinth halls of convincing, very, very convincing ways of thinking and philosophy that are like perfect mimics of the real thing.
Well, multiple people who were in the cult said that attempts to bring him to justice from the outside only further entrenched them in the cult.
Yep.
Because it gave them, and you hear this with many cults. It's like, I mean, if the feds are going to successfully get in there and like take apart a cult, that's one thing. And obviously if children are being assaulted or something like this, but like a lot of these, when you're talking about consenting adults,
there's nothing you can do.
It's your attempts to save people, which is STS, right? Your attempts to save people and intervene will just play into the hand of the thing. I mean, and I've just experienced this with like when my sister was in an abusive relationship with a narcissist, and I thought I could outsmart him and go in there and like use logic. But when the people are in that, it's like a spell of like delusion. And the same thing when someone's in a relationship with someone who's like this, they're living in someone's psychotic break. It's the only way how to describe it. Everything's so distorted. And they said that. They were like, everything was upside down. We weren't eating. We weren't sleeping. It just sounds like psychosis. Another thing that they said in this documentary was that he would stay up late and sleep in, and you weren't allowed to speak until he woke up because it was like silent meditation time. And the thing that's so funny is it's like, no, it's not. He's just controlling all of you, and he can't risk you guys having conversations that he's not privy to. So he has to be the last one to go to bed, and like he has to make sure that you guys can't talk.
Yeah. It's so wild.
It's so fucking wild. Okay, another thing that was very funny. I'm like, need food or coffee or something. There's a story that one of them, that the Kieran guy tells of, I can never remember anyone's name, of he did like his video stuff, and Ben put him in charge of waking him up in the morning. And so then he took forever to wake up, and then he like crawled straight into doing this Kieran guy is very funny too. But so Benito had to do this, like, I don't know what the fuck, retreat meeting or something.
He's in front of like 800 people or something.
Yeah, in front of 800 people. And he was still asleep. Like he just woke up. And so
he's hungover. I mean,
he's hungover, which also crazy. I mean, if it's, I don't know, it's my thing, but like,
red flag.
I don't know. If it's just a kind of drunken orgies as part of the spiritual thing, it might just be drunken orgies. Do you know what I mean? But anyway, everyone sat there for 45 minutes while this guy was just silent. Like, and he knew he was just waking up from a hangover, but everyone else was like, oh my God, he's so still. Like, he's so able to stay so still. He's so magical, but it was actually just, he was hungover. Everyone thought he was blissed out.
Right. And that's the thing where you can start to see it clearly. And I would say early on when I like watched him, there were a couple moments that icked me, because you can see when someone is forcing a mimicry of what we think it looks like to be an enlightened person. So him, Eckhart Tolle is one that when I first came across him, I was like, dude, this guy talks so fucking slow. Oh my God. And sometimes he just sits there for 3 minutes after someone asks a question. Like, what is this? And then I started to understand. I was like, oh, this is because he's like so zenned out. He's comfortable just taking time to kind of find the thought, and he's going to find a really clear thought. And so in Eckhart Tolle, I don't think anybody's perfect, but like it seemed to make sense. I'm like, okay, this guy's pretty embodied in what he's talking about. And so I get it. But then you have these people, Benito, come along, and it's like he's doing a mimicry of what he saw Eckhart Tolle do. So I'm going to, before I talk and somebody asks me a question, I'm just going to sit and smile and awkwardly make eye contact with everyone in the room, But you can tell when someone's faking that. Like, and I think at a certain point I wouldn't have been able to tell. But as you start to pick up discernment and like get an idea of what it actually feels like when somebody's embodying what they're saying, you can tell there's something off. And I'm like, he's forcing this for some reason. But like for most people, you're just like, wow, because it is so awkward. You want to make sense of the awkwardness and not write off that like this guy he doesn't know the answer or he doesn't know what to say or whatever, you go, oh, no, I don't understand it because he's so enlightened. Like, and so then you overlook all these other things. Like, he does look a little hungover, maybe.
You're filling in,
filling in the blanks.
You want him to be something, and so you're filling that in. I wasn't taking notes for the first couple episodes, but one constant in almost every single person, I would say, except for Aaron, is that they ignored a lot of red flags because they were flattered or they felt chosen, or like they weren't using the word clout,
or they wanted to be close. Yeah.
Yeah. That this is why love bombing from unwell people works. And I'm not saying I'm above this, but it's very tricky. If someone outside of you have them pedestalized, so you go, and this is what I'm talking about. People get confused when I talk about pedestalizing me. You can like the work that I do. But when you start to see me as like above making mistakes or above reproach or incapable of being wrong because you like my work, like you're seeing me as something different than I am, and I don't like the feeling of that because I am going to make mistakes, and I don't want the responsibility of people seeing me as some sort of superhuman because I can't live up to that. I know I'm not going to exploit that, but it's a bad practice because a lot of people will exploit it. Like a lot of people, that feeling makes me very uncomfortable, but a lot of people will take advantage of that. A lot of people, without even knowing. Most people will take advantage of that. So
yeah, if you have a complex of like needing to be liked, you don't feel like you fit. When you get that much energy of like people lifting you up, it's like a worship thing. I mean, I'm telling you, dude, in the success of the band, it's not an easy thing. It's something that you don't really understand until you experience an overwhelming amount of attention from people that, again, culturally, it's just most people like do that. They elevate people. It's like what we've been programmed to do. So it's a phenomena that like occurs no matter what. But the life that it gives you and the validation of some of those like traumas, boy, does it feel good. And boy, does it feel like I can do anything and let me just go and believe my own legend. And then you start treating people like shit because like you're getting a reflection of reality that like you are a god.
You are above people.
And it takes a lot of like, I don't know, like self-work and like really being able to understand that or live a life for a couple of years where you feel like you can't do anything because if you mess up, these people aren't going to like you and your whole infrastructure collapses. I mean, this is all the fame thing where it's a very hypnotic energy. Again, that is the crux of like what the reality is built on is like fame and celebrity. That's where all the power is. If you can understand that the reality is like distorted in a way to like only reward people that are like feedable, or they can use them as people to get feed from other people. That's what that function is. And it feels good. It feels like ecstasy. But it's just for the material reality and kind of used as distortion. It's just a hard drug to not get pulled into,
If you perceive someone as holding a higher social station than you, that's already something to maybe look at, that hierarchical way of looking at things. And then you being given access to them makes you feel like it elevates your social station. And you can, your brain is going to find a less critical way of framing that. Like, I feel honored or whatever. But like, why do you feel honored around one human? It's one thing to be like, I really like your work. And so I'm excited to be around someone who I really like their work. But it's typically not that pure. So when like they perceive him as higher than them because he does these TikToks or whatever, these reels or whatever the fuck it was back then, and it's clout. And it's important to understand that many of us are wired, most of us are wired to think that famous people or people with clout are better than us. and then you think it elevates your social status to be around this person, understand that you are being extractive, which is leaving you open to an extractive person. And I think to like leave that part out of the conversation, how many people were, and I'm not saying they're bad, but like how many people were like, I felt chosen by the hot guy or whatever. It's like, okay, well, that's a hole in your aura. Do you know what I mean? Like that's,
why do you feel like
if you're justifying behavior because someone's hot, rich, popular, famous, or whatever, you want proximity to them, their behavior should be like, you know what I mean? Like you should hold them to the same standard that you would hold someone who's a cashier at a hardware store. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like they shouldn't get a pass on shitty behavior because they have elevated social status. And if you are allowing that because they have elevated social status, I don't know, like that whole conversation around power dynamics is a thing. And also I think it's strange that we don't ever talk about, and it depends on the situation. Like, you know what I mean? If it's a job that you already have and you're feeding your kids and the CEO comes in and sexually harasses you and you don't tell on him, that's different than, you know, I allowed a fucking influencer to harass me because I wanted to also be an influencer. Yeah. You know what I mean? So not saying blame and fault here, but that is something that many people in this were like, I was flattered. And so it's like a lot of times like these things can, will you drink any more coffee?
Yeah, I'll maybe have a little more.
A lot of these things can access us through our own shadows.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I'm almost done with these. Everyone's lessons or spiritual challenges benefited Ben. You know, I get that once they were like in this, you're in an upside down reality. Like you're cut off from the rest of the world. You're just in like an Airbnb with a crazy person, right? But one thing that was like that whole story about like, that Jade story is so fucking sad. But like, they're like, oh, you have jealousy, so you need to have a threesome with your your boyfriend or whatever to get rid of your jealousy. I have done this kind of shit to myself. This kind of like forcing myself into traumatic relationship dynamics to try to push jealousy out when, you know, as I actually healed, I understood that like jealousy is a human emotion. And if I just name it and sit with it, that's all that really needs to happen. I don't have to punish it. I don't have to try to burn it out.
Yeah.
Which I've done a lot, but I also don't have to reject it, because when you reject it and deny it, then you end up acting out subconsciously with it. And this is where the danger, I would say high vibes only is the most dangerous of all.
Yeah.
Because you get, and this was huge in this, like nobody's allowed to have feelings. Everything was like high vibes only, which is like such a bastardization of high vibes only, because high vibes just means more zoomed out. So more context, more complexity. But these people think high vibes only means ecstatic happiness at all times.
Yeah.
Which requires a lot of psychedelics and a lot of dissociation. But when you like reject every fucking human experience, you end up in something very distorted. And so this was, you know, I do believe that is a pretty dangerous, can be easily exploited, I guess, way of looking at things.
Is that whole that statement, the road to hell is paved with good intentions or whatever? Is that the statement? It's so true in this context. Like that's where a lot of the true negative stuff is, like, it's always coded in these really like surface level positive things, you know, that are really easy to understand, very like handout. And it's kind of like, oh yeah, you just overlook any negativity pretty quickly. That's like where it all is. I think for me, I mean, in my route, like, you've experienced a lot of dark things in life in a different way, where it's like pretty directly, obviously like dark, but that's kind of the underworld you were living in. But in my life, I just, through all of my experiences in life, like that's where I have found the most treacherous stuff is under the guise of goodness and love and light and like just avoidance of things that it's like the most complicated, like nefarious, weird shit is hidden in that, you know? And I just think when you look at nature, it makes so much sense. The fish thing with the worm, the illusions in reality, like a lot of the poisonous things are the things that are really pretty and present in a way to attract a lot of things.
Yeah.
And they're very tactful at that. Like, and that's what's happening, you know, with humans and the complex social structures we've put together in this like, addictive reality, and you never get enough. And like, we're all in our houses doing these secret things in our minds that we like cannot let go of. And we're addicted to, like, that's it. That's the thing, you know, not taken care of in those small ways where they're just thoughts and you let them continue to go. They start to seep into your reality. And like, now you're playing that illusion game. And it's just a very difficult thing to see with all the programming. The more that programming comes off, you really can kind of start to see it. But my God, it's like, it's fascinating how much that statement is true. And it's why, you know, a lot of these people that have been heroes in our reality for so long are getting called out, you know, the people that were heroes. And it's very difficult for us to see some of our celebrity friends that have been our favorite heroes in movies turn out like they're they're doing the darkest shit you'd ever think, you know, behind the scenes because of this phenomena, you know.
I think raising your kids to be a people pleaser is giving them an extreme disadvantage in life.
Yeah.
Another, like, am I going to describe this right? Let me see if I wrote it down. A lot of people walk through a like life with a kind of subconscious core belief that they are bad. That's at the underpinning of how people engage with STS, STO, low vibes, like whatever. It's a purity thing. And so the wanting to like purify yourself of like negative thinking or negative, like, it's all Christian residue, right? It's sin doctrine. And so when people start engaging with these esoteric, as you said, things, and they're dealing with them in an exoteric way, they're either taking them extremely literally or they're running them through filters from religion.
From previous beliefs, yeah.
Yeah. And so, and this is, I've seen this in myself. I've seen it in a lot of things, like how you engage with wellness can very easily turn into this, like, I am impure, you know, where you start to feel like you're every single thing. You have to get the water clean. You have to get the food clean. You can't, everything has to be organic. You have to be this until it's crazy, you know, and you're not trusting your body to be able to fucking navigate any of it. Mm-hmm. And you know, when you first find out that thoughts create reality, you can end up in this, lots of us end up in this, like, oh my God, did I think something impure? Like, I remember doing sessions for people in 2019 where they were like, you know, I thought a negative feeling about my brother and then he died. And did I do that? Like, people were like, oh my God, I'm like, I have too much power, you know, and it's like, okay, well, this doesn't work. It doesn't work like that, you know? So the way that a lot of these people were kind of guided into these sessions where he did these distortion meetings and he sits across from them and he's like scanning for who he's going to call on with the distortion and then kind of just like shreds them. Right. And then that's what the Kieran guy was saying is like, we weren't actually doing anything. It was all this, like, he would talk about these things we were going to get done and then we would never get any work done because we would just be in these meetings. Well, that's because this guy's an energy vampire and he's feeding. And when someone tells you all these things that are wrong with you and then you go, oh, okay, I need to get like the thing that makes you believe that you deserve that is something much deeper. Like there is a belief that you are inherently bad. Yeah. And this is what Christianity tells you from birth, is that you are just inherently bad. You were born a sinner. And that is such a fucking toxic doctrine. And it's so toxic to be fed to children under the age of 7 because it ends up in your subconscious. But then a lot of people's spirituality takes on the exact same thing. So like kind of if you zoom out from the story they're telling, it's the archetype. He's Jesus. They're all the lowly, sinful, because there were a couple of people that Kieran Guy would be like, so do you not have distortions? And he's like, no, I'm just a mirror. And a part of the reason that people are not calling him out is because for a lot of them, they hate themselves. They have that belief that they are bad. Other people in the group, because it was different for different people, other people in the group had raging PDA, like the men so far have had like PDA. So when he finally tried to overtly dominate them, they were out. They were like, no, fuck you. But when he would cry and be a fucking baby, of course he was allowed to fuck all these different women because his chakras were cleaning their chakras, or my mad dick is magic. Penis. I mean, this is an absurd podcast series. This guy is absurd. But then of course, this Kieran Guy played a card game with one of Ben's girlfriends at the table in front of everyone. And he was like, I'm being abused or whatever. And Kieran then was like, oh shit, I don't want to cause someone else pain. And so then he gets pulled into his empathy. And so I do think many people's empathy, if your empathy means putting up with terrible behavior, and this is an issue of mine, putting up with terrible behavior to like coddle someone who is being a raging abusive hypocrite, that's where empathy's not always a good thing. It's often not a good thing.
It fucked me up for my whole life. I mean, that's the thing, the people pleasing thing. It's when I'm saying there's like the darkest stuff exists in what you perceive to be good, is like being a people pleaser was a thing that I thought was like the highest. I'm like, I care for everybody. I let people walk all over me. I'm doing good, like this is God's work. I'm the most empathetic person in the world. I'm an empath. That's the thing in spirituality. Everybody's like, I'm an empath. So I will sit with people and take all your bullshit for you. Like there's so much disempowerment in that idea, like the true empathy. And I think even this goes into love. Like we're all saying, it's like, love is the point. We're supposed to understand love. That love is like, I think we should use a bunch of other words before that, because love is such a all-encompassing thing. It's this like unconditional love I don't think we can even fathom what that actually is, that we're all saying like, okay, I'm going to be love and light. I'm just going to love everybody. It's like you're disempowered. You need action in the reality. And that does take having like some balls, being able to see what it is, call it out, set a boundary, and not, just overly empathize with someone when they flip their script all of a sudden. I think I did some of the darkest things in my life as far as for myself when I was acting out of empathy for others. I sacrificed so much of myself that I almost lost who I really was under the guise of like doing good for other people, when it's like, it sucks. It's really, really difficult. In
situations where you're being exploited and then you're filling in the blanks, giving the benefit of the doubt, allowing yourself to be exploited. And part of this is because there's no introspection happening here.
Yeah.
Where it's not like, how does my body feel right now? What are my feelings right now? What is the reality of what's happening right now? It's like there's a lack of presence, and you're kind of like sucked in to, like I said, someone else's.
And I mean, a huge part of that is just being able to communicate openly, like with what one is feeling in the moment, and like trying to put words to it. I was always afraid to do that, to speak up for myself, because I was so concerned with hurting someone else with what I say. So here's in a situation where I'm like, what naturally should be happening right now is like, I should just voice, I am uncomfortable with what's going on, or like this thing that's happening I'm experiencing from you is like, this is what I'm experiencing, this is what I'm feeling. for me, like, I thought that, like, if I did that, it was going to hurt somebody else, because me setting a boundary was going to, the ultimate goal was to get the thing that you're doing that's bothering me to like stop, you know, not out of I'm trying to control you, but just to clarify, like, I don't like this. That's going to like create conflict. And for me, all conflict was like a sign someone's getting hurt. And I didn't want to hurt someone else more than I would be hurt. Like, I was more concerned with hurting someone else than me being hurt. So what did I get? 20 years of being hurt, you know, and taking it on the head and trying to be a martyr. That's something a lot of the like Law of One Cassiopean stuff talks about. Is like one of the actually most upside down concepts of reality is like the pursuit to want to be a martyr is, oh God, is it like a trap?
It's so funny too, because then it's like, you know, boundaries are saying what you are and are not willing to participate in. So if someone with actual boundaries came into this cult, which they wouldn't, because this guy is magnetizing people with poor boundaries, because it's magnetizing United States citizens in their early 20s. And we're not taught to have any fucking boundaries in this culture. Then, you know, there's certain things where he's making people stay up all night, or he's making them work or whatever. And then it's all just narrative. And so on the times where someone does say, no, I don't want to do that, he immediately comes back with a story. He's like, oh, it's because you're resisting your healing. And now if you're dealing with someone with boundaries, and I'm saying this like I've had boundaries for more than fucking like 3 calendar days. But if you're dealing with someone who has boundaries, they don't engage with stories, and they just say, okay, well, you can tell yourself whatever you want about it. I'm not going to defend that. I'm going to bed, or I'm not available to film that. Well, you're getting Okay, well, you can tell yourself whatever you would like about that. I'm not getting in a storytelling match with you. I'm told you what I'm available for and what I'm not available for. And it's like crazy how fast
that
diminishes that. And, you know, like you've told me your stories, and I witnessed some of your like lack of boundaries with people in your life. And it was so, well, you're bad. Well, everyone thinks you're bad. Well, everyone thinks you don't care about them, blah, 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 blah. And then back then you would be like, but I do care. But see, here's how I do. But this is what here's where I'm coming from, you know. But if it's just like, well, I'm not available for that, so you can go home and write yourself a fucking book about why I'm doing that. That's not my experience with it. And if me being available for that, not available for that doesn't work for you, then it doesn't have to work for you, you know? And obviously if you're dealing with people operating from good faith, like in our relationship, if I'm experiencing you as not caring about me in a situation, I can tell you that, but like, if I'm operating, like if I'm assuming good faith and I'm operating from good faith, I'm not going to tell you that as a declarative statement about yourself, because I can't tell you what your internal experience is. So I'm going to say, I'm experiencing you as avoiding me. And because I love you and trust you, I'm going to let you tell me what that really is, because I've vetted that you are a safe person to love and trust. And so I think there is this kind of idea in culture that just trusting unhealthy people is because you're such a good person.
Right.
And I don't think it's that you're a bad person, but I think that choosing fantasy over reality is just rather, irresponsible, or like, you know, dangerous. And we shouldn't like, as we move into the world we're moving into, I think that, we should stop equating that naive. I would just want to be able to say naivete.
That's right.
That naivete. I don't like it when you suddenly have to say words French.
Hey, yeah.
Croissant. I don't want to have to say that. Naiveness as a virtue. I don't think it is a virtue. Do you know what I mean? And like, once again, Americans in their early 20s, they didn't have a fucking hope. They didn't have a prayer. But culturally, in general, there is this kind of wolf in the hen house, but I chose to pretend that it was a hen, and then because I'm so innocent or whatever, where it is just like, I think that moving forward, like we would benefit from creating a culture of personal responsibility where children are taught discernment. And part of teaching discernment is, to children is trusting children's discernment. Like I grew up in like, you're going to make me kiss my creepy uncle and then wonder how I got molested for 3 months.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you'd give me zero fucking agency over my own body ever. And then wonder why I didn't know this guy was supposed to be doing this to me for years, Okay. So one of the episodes is a guy who wrote a book about this cult. I didn't really like his episode. I found his episode kind of boring, so we didn't finish it. But he's like a Dutch writer who just got interested in this cult, and maybe he writes about cults a lot or something. I don't know. I tuned him out a lot. He's first of all an atheist. Or I don't know if he's an atheist, but he does not into this stuff. And so one thing I don't enjoy when we're talking about cults built on conscious ideas is I don't really enjoy I would say in general, I would say like there are cult aspects to 12-step recovery. I don't really enjoy the commentary about 12-step recovery cult-like behavior from non-addicts.
Right.
If you've never needed the program, I don't find your 2 cents interesting. I don't enjoy naturally skinny people giving me tips on how to lose weight.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, if you don't have the context, if you don't understand the words he's saying, that's what he said. I couldn't understand anything he was saying. Okay. Well, so then you're not even
on the same frequency.
You're not even initiated into the, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you don't understand any of that. So it's a huge critical context missing. That said, he was quite knowledgeable about how high control groups play out. And so that part was interesting. But one thing that he said was that there was someone who was into this stuff. I don't know if he met Benito or whatever, but had killed himself. And
I think there have been a couple people that have been in this cult that then that ended up killing themselves.
Yeah, so there's a couple different things. There's this guy makes content, and there are people who are into the content, and maybe they are in a Facebook group or a fucking Discord or something for the content. And then there are the people getting tortured by this dude. The people who are getting tortured by this dude are like in the house with him, and it's just people that come to hang with him. It's not a very organized cult in that it's not like built in layers or whatever. And it's kind of fly by the seat of your pants kind of chaos. I could be wrong, but I feel like NXIVM was something much more organized and laid out by someone who was, had a different personality disorder. And I can't remember because, like I said, I tuned him out till he said suicide, and then I tuned back in. But my understanding was that this guy was never like hanging out with Ben. He just was a part of the community, like online. Those people are all not necessarily in a cult. They're listening to and unless I'm wrong, like I could be misunderstanding, but everyone who went from the forums into his physical presence said it was 2 completely different things. So the conversation about, because how did he say it? He said the suicide and the people getting depressed from his teachings. He said a lot of people get depressed from his teachings. And then the way he described what makes them depressed is in many ways a complete misunderstanding of the teachings, because a depressed person is looking for something from the teachings.
Yeah.
Not understanding them and then using them as a form of like self-flagellation, whatever words. So it's like, I can't remember. It's the purity thing. And so it's like these people become obsessed with watching their thoughts, making sure they're never negative, and so that's kind of what he was talking about. And then they get really obsessed with the non-physical reality, and they want to escape their physical reality. And so, I mean, I've obviously seen a shit ton of this in awakening spaces over the years, and and I encounter it a decent amount between sessions and emails and stuff I get from people where it's like, we're talking about this stuff and some people misunderstand it. Like some people, you actually just got a bunch of like things from someone, like I get things from people in psychosis and they're just like engaging with things on a completely different wavelength than they're going out, you know? And I can't speak to whether or not, because there is a kind of an underlying blame shame thing coming from Benito. I can't sit through one fucking TikTok from that dude or one reel. He is insufferable to me. I don't like curated spiritual content anyway, but like I find him like tough to listen to even for a second. So I can't listen to enough of his content to tell you what, but that was something that just stood out to me is this like, okay, but it's how the guy's engaging, because he's kind of making a blanket statement about victim consciousness or, you know, yeah, I don't know. Did you want to say anything about that part?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's what's like part of the paradox of these things is like from a certain level of understanding, you can see what like Benito's talking about as like he's talking about these universal truths, but he's like they've distorted them and misunderstood them. And so that captures a lot of people into that are on a pursuit to like understand themselves or get enlightened or get into a place where they're happy and peaceful and that it's just it's hard because like you it's this whole thing where like the listener is responsible in some sense of like what they do with the content, and then the person who's sharing it is responsible to share the content in a way that is like most likely to be understood in the way that you understand it. And it's just so difficult because the information that's being shared usually is of this esoteric nature. And I don't know how to put words to like what that actually is, but it's not an understanding through any kind of logical data, like nothing like we've learned in school to understand something, because that's all based on like factual evidence. And if it only exists if it's been studied and materially proven, all those things. This information exists it can only be understood in what I think is this, it's not even the imagination in the way that we've understood the imagination. The way we understand imagination is like this fantasy thing. It's Disney. It's like, it's this magical world. And essentially you're kind of always taught like that's not real. Artists always are imaginative and they use this function, but it's the imaginal function. So when I'm imagining a fantasy, like the muscle that I'm using to build that's your connection to the spiritual world. You know, like that's where you understand, you use your own myth and metaphor to like understand something, and like you're using it in your head. And, you know, so it's like a very real function. And that when someone is not approaching and listening to the information being given with that mechanism, you're always going to misunderstand the stuff. And now we do that as we waken up. You like read a book and you're like, oh shit, oh my God, that's amazing. And then you move on. Somehow you come back to that book and you read it again. You're like, oh my God, it's a whole different book. I misunderstood half of it. Oh yeah. Shit. And so it's okay that that's happening. But I think what's interesting is like in its nature, this, you know, universal quote truth that we're all looking for is esoteric, and we're using this other function to understand it. Already at its base level, the esoteric thing is like you can't ever fucking get a consensus that everybody is using it the same way. We all subjectively use that thing. And it is like this very simple truth. Like when you get it in your imagination, you have these aha moments. You're like, reality is so goddamn simple. There's like 4 fucking basic laws or something. To explain those, we have to dumb down into the word of language, which everyone is using like that substrate, like with different parts of their brain, imagination or not. And so I just at times when I've realized this, I don't want to talk. I don't want to share. It's why it's so difficult for me to communicate sometimes, because I've been misunderstood so many times on day-to-day things. Now, when I'm trying to talk about these things that are so complex that for my own individual internal experience, I know to be very true, but I don't know it in a way that has words with it. I know it from this like weird experience. And I try to explain the experience to you, and I have to dumb down and distort it to get you to understand close to what I'm talking about. So this is why we're always talking in metaphor, or like we're criticizing Benito about this teaching, but then I'm using the same framework of teaching to describe why it's wrong, right? So it's like you're always caught in like being a hypocrite, and you're always going to be misunderstood. So like when I've had these like psychosis people come at me and like throw all this shit, I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe that's what you took from what I said. Like, but then I look at it, I'm like, oh, I get how you understood it that way. And I see where you're caught in this thing. But anything I say to you, I know you're running it through a filter. So anything that I say that's trying to get you to see the truth, you're using as something against me. I'm stuck. I can't talk anymore. I can't. Goodbye. There's no way to get out of this. And that's like the nature of like with everybody that's trying to talk about the truth online. This is what's happening. Yeah. And that's why everyone in psychosis, that's why everyone's blame game. They're evil. They're running a cult. It's like, they're not. They're talking about something that like you can't understand from the level of thinking that you're at.
I mean, they might be like these guys are. There's a cult here, but
well, of course. But I'm just saying there are so many people that are like, people think we're cult leaders, and I'm like, it's so not that, but I get what you're doing. And so that's why I do think that this, like a lot of this information has never been talked about in such a public way as it is now because of this. It creates psychosis of people. It's too hard to understand. So that's why it goes quiet for a long time, and it's only in esoteric circles because those people know how to understand that information. And the art form, to me, which I've always been fascinated with like people like Alan Watts or the fucking Bible, there's an art form of trying to get that truth into use a language that's naturally distorted and leave the truth there for you. But it's only in metaphor and feeling and experience-based stuff. It's not in the text. It's not in all of that. So the art form is to get that truth out in some kind of story, because you have to use story to explain the myths and everything, and do it in a way that is least likely to get understood. And so this is where like the Bible, the esoteric Bible, the original stuff, primarily in like Greek, it seems to be, there's a lot of argument about that, but is a very good version of this, of telling the truth in myth and story and all of this stuff. But on top of that, there's been a lot of things that have come along because it was so good that have like changed a couple words, reoriented it this way, just slowly over time where nobody notices. And over time, you have this thing where now what we would say is the modern day idea of the story of the Bible is so upside down and wrong. But inside of it, the people that know how to see it go, oh shit, it's right there. It's just everybody's misunderstanding it. And so then we've tried to create other ones because that one got hijacked. So then you have things that come along like the Law of One, the Cassiopean stuff, A Course in Miracles, all these other things that are kind of like derivatives of Christianity, but they're trying to create like close off those distortions and create a new like framework to understand this truth in. But even that is distorted, right? So it's like they're always having to understand the things that are coming out in words and people's ideas. Like you're trying to listen to the truth that they're talking about behind those words. You're not grabbing the words. Like in that, we've never been taught to do that, right?
Right.
The imaginal realm function, the imaginal like function in your brain is your connection to the spirit world, is where you can discern everything. But even in that, I would say I've been able to keep my imagination on lock, and I think that's why I can, for my own experience, I feel like I can access some of that. It's distorted half the time, but when I'm imagining something, it's like different. It's not fucking visual images. It's a feeling. I don't know how to like. It's just really impossible to try to like explain that in words that are kind of labeling visual things. So it's all feeling based, but it's like there are images, but they're like they're not like very clear. It's like, I don't know, when I'm imagining something, I don't like just see the fucking thing. It's data. It's like a download, and it comes into clarity through a knowing, and then I have to somehow figure out how to paint that picture in words. And it's just natural that it's never going to be perfect. And so I freeze a lot of the times in wanting to talk about any of it, because I just feel like I'm not a good artist in doing that, doing talking the truth. And then you spin people out, and then you're karmically tied into this thing. It's like such a sketchy job. It's such a sketchy thing to do. But I will say, this is the time to do it. It's like, that's why this is all bubbling up. It's like, but it's just ripe for misunderstandings. Why? Because the feeding is getting shorter for that energy. It needs to feed off everything. So it's going to distort everything it can.
I need to feed, or I'm going to lose my fucking mind. I'm just going to
nip it in the butt. All the cats are like, dinner?
Yeah. All right, we're in the home stretch. We got to try to get this done soon. Everyone wants dinner. Yeah, so just the thing about the I don't know. I guess it's something I'm still kind of learning, is like the thing you're communicating is not necessarily the thing that people are taking from it. Like, people are taking things through their own lens. And I used to think if I just said something clear enough, then I would be understood. And I think we talked about this in the last couple episodes. Like, I get reflections of what people are taking from my podcasts or my content. And I'm like, what? Where if I encounter someone who has a lot of I'm not doing enough programming, and I get on a session with them and they go, I know you told me I'm not supposed to do this. And it's like, I don't think I've ever said you're not supposed to do anything, but that's your way of looking at the world. And so that's what you're hearing from me. It's the thing that irked me about the way he said this is these aren't Benito's teachings. These are things in this book that are extremely open to interpretation because they are channeling. And so I just once again, it's not necessarily for these people, but just kind of a general, kind of a thing that irks me in reality is, once again, there's just no acknowledgement. It wasn't the way that a lot of people interpret these, and whatever. It's not in defense of Benito. It's it's not Benito's books, But it is just kind of this concept of, once again, the individual is never responsible for how they're engaging with anything ever, which seems like it's being generous, but you've actually just got a bunch of disempowered automatons walking around because we're never taught to take responsibility for how we're engaging with anything. So these kind of absolute statements about the teachings. And then even when the guy was these teachings make people really depressed, and then he lists a lot of bastardizations of what personal responsibility, victim consciousness, what any of these things mean, is his interpretation of that person's interpretation. It's semantics, I guess, but it drives me nuts. As we moved on in the thing, there was reiterating that villainizing victim consciousness is what caused this rather than group dynamics. So when I hear this story, and once again, we can't even convey, you really have to kind of listen to it long form to really get the treacherous journey these people are on with this dude's psychosis. And the thing that makes the psychosis really fucked up, I mean, he obviously does fucked up stuff on his own, is that the group participates. So the group gets together for these distortion meetings where you're essentially being psychologically abused, not just by Benito, but by the group. And a lot of people are deferring their authority to the group, and you know, the fact that the group agrees with him is fucking them up. I mean, a lot of the psychological fuckery is the group.
Yeah.
And when I hear that story, the way that I, as a highly individual person, interprets it is, this is why groups are dangerous. Like, this group think, you don't have to be in a cult to see this. You know, you can see this in politics, how people engage with politics, how people engage with online spaces. Don't let her stand on the computer. I don't like the way that groups organize themselves. I don't like the hierarchy that people build. And you hear that in here because he has like a right-hand woman, Corey, who enforces and reports back to him. And she carries out...
She ends up being almost as worse.
She carries out... She was his fucking Ghislaine to his Epstein. And... then the way that everyone behaves together. So if anyone falls out of line, they kind of whatever. And so like, because I'm very like group adverse, that's what stands out to me is like toxic group dynamics. And nobody talks about that. Like, you know, there's the we are conditioned for these group dynamics, but these group dynamics in many ways are how the Matrix polices humans. Is the humans will do it. The humans will be the cops. You don't even need cops. You don't need the feds to be investigating every single one of us because enough people are willing to be feds.
Yep.
And so the toxicity of the group dynamic, which comes from a belief that in consensus, you know?
Yeah.
We are also programmed to believe that if everyone in the room sees the emperor wearing new clothes, then it must mean he's wearing new clothes, that people doubt their own experience in favor of the consensus. And, you know, obviously this isn't the point of that podcast, but for as many times as they brought up, like they're telling the story of something super toxic happening with the group. And then they go, it's because you weren't allowed to be a victim that you wouldn't call it out. And it's like, no, it's because the group is toxic. I mean, you're all behaving toxically. And yes, you know what I mean? There's like the Aaron Abke guy didn't ever participate in toxic behavior.
Right.
I would say he didn't fully call things out a couple times that should have been called out, but you know, if you allow yourself to sit in a room and eviscerate another person in order to avoid getting eviscerated yourself, you know, you're not you got some of your own stuff, you know? And it's important for us, and we all do. I'm not saying I'm above that, but like, yeah, just sometimes the things that people blame for things is like, it can kind of really get under my skin because it's, I don't know, it's like, that's not what I'm seeing as the issue here, but okay. That's really it. I think the last thing that I wrote was people are living in his psychosis. I've covered that plenty. And then they always blame the victim and not the abuser. And the way that he worded it is like, no one thinks the abuser is bad. And I feel like that's not what's happening. I feel like the abuser being bad is an obvious. And so people are trying to figure out, why did you let him treat you that way? And partially because they want to believe that they wouldn't. But we are responsible for what we allow ourselves to take part in. And I think that trying to absolve that responsibility, not blame, not fault, but trying to absolve that responsibility is just going to make it happen again, you know, where, you know, creating a culture that you are responsible for who you let around you and you are responsible for how people treat you within reason. Obviously, there's always exceptions, but we have cultivated a culture of letting things slide. And then I say this as someone who's been in domestically violent situations, who's been repeat sexually assaulted by the same person. So I'm not saying this to like I don't understand how it happens. But when I look back at those experiences for me, it's because I was deeply, deeply conditioned to fill in the blanks, give people the benefit of the doubt, make excuses for people's behavior, not stand up for myself, people please, fucking let people do whatever they wanted to my body, because as a child I was conditioned that my body was not my own to make decisions of. And so becoming a fully autonomous person that has boundaries is like brand new for me, halfway through my life. And so I think that, I guess what I'm thinking about is like changing the culture so that the children growing up have like more of a sense of boundaries. You know what I mean? I mean, part of the reason that people get in these situations is because half of our parents are fucking pathological. Mm-hmm. So you get in there. I mean, my mom had no boundaries and was fucking awful to deal with. And so when I got around people like this when I was in my 20s, I didn't go like, this is fucking weird, dude. I didn't have that. I was like, oh, when someone's acting like this, we all navigate around them. We coddle them. We try to make them happy so that they don't hurt us,
Yeah. It's crazy. Those patterns, it's like once you start to clock them, you're like, oh my God, it is riddled in everything that we learn as kids. It's these tiny things that you think are innocuous, just them isolated by themselves. But there's a consistent pattern in all of it, which is this disempowerment, consensus-based thing. And I think that's what the human design context of Cross of Planning's Cross Sleeping Phoenix helps give words and things to point to the nuance of that. And like that, because in the human design context, you can see that going away. Like new, younger people that have been able to like heal and that are now raising children, like have all these things naturally, like kind of ingrained in the way that they are. So it's starting to shift and change. But that like specifically that human design thing, it's like it's so clear where we are in that moment that we're just now all starting to see those programs and deconstruct them. And it's part of the collapse of that. But you have to first see how much, wow, it's like every system of thinking that I have picked up from the reality is functioning in this upside down way. And I have to, reorient that. It's such a subtle, nuanced thing,
God.
But I do think that what's so beautiful about it is that the more it's a liberating factor in it. The idea of taking responsibility for a lot of things it feels easier to point to someone else is a difficult part of the deprogramming. But for me, I'm like, oh, I'm the one responsible. Okay, well, that means that I can figure out how to like adjust this ship so I can go the direction that I want and start moving towards a reality that I feel like that I desire. If I'm responsible, like I have a power to do it. There's a liberating aspect to it.
I should put a little more coffee in here. Because we're talking about taking responsibility. It's like, first of all, going inward, right? And so checking inside with yourself. And what was happening a lot for these people is the denial of their internal experience in favor of this person's experience. So what orienting your life around personal responsibility means, the avatar that you are, the human that you are responsible for it the way that an adult is responsible for a child. And so when you're in this situation with someone who is volatile and just warped and has an inverted reality, what is all these people have in common is they are taking responsibility for him. His actions are their fault. His projections are their responsibility. His feelings are theirs to manage. And no one is taking responsibility for them. They are orbiting this man. And so part of what taking responsibility for is like, it's my life. And the reality that I am experiencing is a reflection of my internal experience. So if this guy is being weird and I'm feeling jealous, then first it's like I have to go in and identify how I'm feeling. I'm feeling jealous. Okay, that I don't need to reject that part of myself. I don't need to fix that part of myself. Why am I feeling jealous? Because this person is, raw dogging my girlfriend in the living room in front of me. Okay, is that something that I should be allowing myself to witness, you know? I'm responsible for myself, which means I am responsible for keeping myself safe. Is this safe? Have I put myself into a safe situation? You know, so like taking personal responsibility isn't just like being hard on yourself. It is like, I am the one that's responsible for me. I'm not actually responsible for this weirdo and his weirdo fucking mood swings. He's not my responsibility. I am my responsibility. And so am I fed? Have I had enough sleep? Have I had enough sunshine? Have I had enough space by myself? Do I have enough autonomy? Am I getting enough free time? Am I getting enough quality time? If I do believe that someone else outside of me giving me a distortion reading, which I'm obviously fully against, have I given myself enough time to integrate that and recover from that? If I've done psychedelics, have I made sure that I had all the resources necessary to do that? If I've committed to working for something for him, have I assured that I have enough me time? That like personal responsibility is taking care of yourself. And what these people are doing is they're letting this like chaos demon knock them completely out of any semblance of routine. They're not getting enough sleep. They're not getting enough.
Okay, speaking of demons,
They're
cat
not
is chasing a demon in the room.
Doing full arched back fucking hops.
Into nothing. Like there's nothing you're chasing right now.
I think the sun is making that a little illusion for her to chase. So, I mean, that is another way of like looking at things when it comes to personal responsibility. There was a lot of personal sacrifice, you know, in an effort to manage that person's experience. And part of taking radical self-responsibility is releasing yourself from the burden of managing other people's experience in any way whatsoever is like, and that's a work in progress for sure. We experienced a good amount of that on the vacation. Like, you know, me not wanting you to be upset that I'm on my phone in the car rather than just having that conversation with you. And then we get together with family and you and I are both just like, fucking, well, they're not going to like it if we do this. They're not going to, you know, that takes a long time to break that habit. But that habit is what makes you a good victim to shit like this, is like, you can just go on autopilot and manage other people's experience. Meanwhile, if I don't take responsibility for me, no one else is. You know what I mean? Because it's my job. All right. Love you. Bye.
Bye.
I think we both have sessions available. Bye.